In the shadow of Rome's Colosseum, a lowly service named Lucius risks everything for a stolen loaf to feed his starving kin, unraveling the brutal order of the arena. Will his desperate act spark rebellion among the laborers, or will the empire's iron grip crush their quiet resistance? Dive into a tale of toil, sacrifice, and defiance in the heart of the eternal city. Story 1. The miserable life of a servant in a Tudor household. Imagine yourself rising before the first light of dawn filters through the narrow slits of a drafty window in a grand Tudor manor house. It is the year 1550, and you are one of the many servants in the household of a middling English nobleman, perhaps in the countryside of Hertfordshire. The air is chill and damp, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke from the dying embers of last night's fire. Your bed, if you can call it that, is a simple straw pallet shared with 2 other maids in the attic space above the kitchens. As you stir, the rustle of the straw pricks at your skin through the thin woolen blanket, a constant reminder of the discomfort that defines your existence. Your day begins with the mundane yet essential task of lighting the fires. You fumble in the dimness for your tinderbox, striking flint against steel until a spark catches on the charcloth. The great hall's massive hearth requires armloads of logs, hauled from the woodpile outside where frost clings to the bark. Your hands, already calloused and cracked from endless scrubbing, ache as you arrange the kindling. This ritual is not just about warmth, it sets the rhythm for the entire household. Without it, the lord and lady cannot rise comfortably. The cooks cannot prepare meals, and the day's labors grind to a halt. In Tudor England, servants like you numbered in the dozens for even modest estates, forming a rigid hierarchy where you, as a scullery maid or footman, occupy the lowest rungs. As the flames flicker to life, you turn to fetching water from the well in the courtyard. The bucket is heavy, its rope frayed from years of use, and the water sloshes coldly against your skirts as you carry it back. Pails in hand, you navigate the stone-flagged floors, slippery from yesterday's spills. The household's water needs are insatiable for washing linens, cleaning pewter plates, and preparing the morning pottage. A thick porridge of oats and herbs simmered over the fire. You measure out the grains from the storeroom, where sacks of flour and barrels of salted meat are guarded against rats and pilferage. Theft, even of a crust, could mean dismissal, or worse, a whipping in the stocks. By mid-morning, the house awakens fully. You assist in serving breakfast in the great hall, where tapestries depicting biblical scenes hang on the walls, their colors faded from smoke and time. The family dines on manchat bread, ale, and perhaps a joint of mutton, while you and your fellows eat scraps in the servants' hall-course rye bread and cheese, washed down with small beer. Your meals are sparse, designed to sustain labor without indulgence. Nutrition is a luxury. Scurvy from lack of fresh produce in winter is common, and you rely on occasional gifts of apples from the orchard or herbs from the garden you tend. The afternoon brings the ceaseless cycle of cleaning. You scrub the wooden trestle tables with sand and vinegar, polish the silver plate that gleams only for the master's guests, and beat the rushes on the floor to freshen them, though they harbor fleas and the occasional mouse. Laundry is a grueling affair. You haul cauldrons of water to boil with lye soap, pounding linens against washboards until your arms burn. Drying them on hedges in the wind exposes you to the elements, rain or shine. In this era, hygiene is rudimentary. Baths are rare, and you make do with a weekly wipe down using a basin. Socially, your world is confined. Marriages among servants require the master's permission, and courtship is furtive, whispered in stolen moments. Wages are meager, perhaps £5 a year for a maid, paid quarterly, supplemented by livery, clothing, and board. Yet this life offers a semblance of security in an age of vagrancy laws that punish the unemployed harshly. You hear tales of enclosures displacing peasants from common lands, forcing many into service, or beggary. As the sun dips low, you prepare for supper, laying out trenchers, and the day's end brings mending by candlelight, sewing torn hems or darning stockings. Exhaustion settles in your bones, but sleep is brief. What hidden resentments simmer beneath this orderly facade, and how might a single act of defiance alter the course of such a household? As the evening deepens in the Tudor manor, you find yourself standing in the flickering glow of rushlights, their smoky scent mingling with the lingering aroma of roasted capon from the master's supper. It is still 1550, and your role as a servant in this Hertfordshire household binds you to a relentless cycle of tasks that stretch into the night. The great hall, now cleared of trenchers and crumbs, demands sweeping, and you wield a birch broom to gather the debris, bits of bone, spilled ale, and the ever-present rushes that cling to your shoes. The air is heavy with the musty damp of the stone walls, and you pause to wipe sweat from your brow, your coarse apron fraying at the edges from constant use. The household never truly sleeps, and neither do you. Your labor is the invisible thread that holds this world together, beyond the physical toil. Your life is governed by the unspoken rules of deference. You must bow your head when the master or mistress passes, your eyes fixed on the floor to avoid any accusation of insolence. The lord of the manor, perhaps a knight or minor baron, is a distant figure, his authority absolute, yet rarely questioned. The mistress, clad in velvet with a starched ruff, oversees the female servants with a sharp eye, noting every smudge on a goblet or crease in a tablecloth. Her favor could mean an extra portion of bread or a warmer blanket, but her displeasure might lead to a scolding or worse assignment to the most grueling tasks, like scouring the grease-caked spits in the kitchen. The kitchen itself is a world of heat and chaos, where you spend hours turning the spit or stirring a cauldron of pottage over a fire that singes your knuckles. The head cook, a burly man with a temper as fiery as the hearth, barks orders as you chop turnips and leeks, their earthy smells clinging to your hands. Food preparation is an art of economy. Nothing goes to waste. Bones are boiled for broth, and even the drippings from the roast are collected to flavor the servants' meager meals. You learn to stretch resources, mixing barley with oats to thicken the pottage when supplies dwindle in late winter. The manor's self-sufficiency relies on its gardens and livestock, which you help tend, milking cows at dawn, gathering eggs, or weeding the herb beds where rosemary and thyme grow yet. There are moments of quiet connection among the servants. In the dim servants' hall, you share stories over a flickering candle, tales of village fairs, or rumors of courtly scandals in London. These moments are fleeting, as the steward a stern overseer patrols to ensure no one lingers too long. The hierarchy among servants is rigid. The steward and housekeeper command respect, while you, a scullery maid or footman, are expected to obey without question. Resentments fester in whispers. A chambermaid might grumble about the mistress's demands, or a groom might curse the steward's favoritism toward another. You've heard of servants who stole a silver spoon or slipped away to join a traveling troupe. But such acts carry risks, imprisonment or banishment. The manor is not immune to the broader currents of Tudor England. You overhear talk of religious upheaval. King Edward VI's Protestant reforms clashing with Catholic traditions. The household's chapel, where you attend brief prayers, reflects this tension. Some servants cross themselves furtively, others embrace the new English prayer book. Economic strains also seep in. The master grumbles about rising taxes to fund wars against Scotland or France, and you notice fewer candles lit to save tallow. Your own wages, paid in arrears, barely cover a new pair of shoes, worn thin from endless trudging dots. As you mend a torn shift by candlelight, your thoughts drift to the future. The manor's routines are unchanging, yet whispers of unrest among servants, villagers, or even distant rebels hint at something larger. Could a single spark, a moment of defiance, or a secret uncovered disrupt the delicate balance of this household? The long day in the Tudor manor draws to a close, but for you, a servant in this Hertfordshire household of 1550, rest remains elusive. The candles burn low, casting shadows across the servants' quarters where you sit, stitching a patch onto a worn kirtle by the faint light. The air is thick with the scent of tallow and the distant hum of the household settling creaking beams, the clatter of a late-night pot being scrubbed. Your hands, roughened from years of labor, move mechanically, but your mind churns with the weight of the day's events. A whispered rumor has spread among the servants, a missing silver candlestick noticed by the mistress during supper. Suspicion hangs like a fog, and you know that tomorrow's inquiry could upend the fragile order of this household. The manor's rhythm, though grueling, has been your anchor. You rise to stoke the kitchen fire before dawn, carry water, scrub floors, and serve meals, each task blending into the next. But now, the accusation of theft threatens to unravel this routine. The steward, with his ledger and stern gaze, will interrogate each servant, from the lowliest scullery maid to the trusted groom. You recall a fellow maid, Agnes, who was dismissed last year for pocketing a scrap of lace. Her fate was the workhouse, or worse, the open road as a vagrant. The Tudor world is unforgiving. Laws like the 1547 Vagrancy Act brand wanderers as criminals, and you shudder at the thought of such a life. Yet, you wonder if the candlestick's disappearance was an act of desperation, a servant pushed too far by hunger or exhaustion. Life in the manor reflects the broader struggles of Tudor England. The enclosure of common lands has driven many into service, as villages lose grazing rights and families face starvation. You've heard the master complain of rising costs, will prices, fluctuating taxes, funding wars in France. These pressures trickle down, tightening the household's purse strings. The mistress has ordered fewer feasts, and the servants' portions grow smaller. You've learned to savor the occasional wind-fallen, overripe pear from the orchard, or a scrap of bacon slipped to you by the cook. Survival demands ingenuity. You've seen servants barter skills, like mending clothes for an extra ladle of pottage, or hide small stashes of herbs to sell at the village market. The candlestick incident reaches its climax at dawn. The steward gathers the servants in the great hall, where the master and mistress sit. You stand among your peers, heart pounding, as each is questioned. A young footman, Thomas, falters under scrutiny, his stammer betraying him. A search of his pallet reveals the candlestick hidden beneath straw. His punishment is swift, a public whipping in the courtyard, followed by banishment. You watch, silent, as he's led away, his cries echoing. The household resumes its rhythm, but the air feels heavier, trust fractured among the servants. This small drama mirrors the fragility of Tudor society, where loyalty and betrayal coexist uneasily. The manor's survival depends on your labor, yet you remain invisible. Your struggles unrecorded. The candlestick's recovery restores order, but at a cost. You return to your tasks, sweeping, hauling, mending with a renewed sense of caution. The lesson is clear. In this world, survival requires not just toil, but vigilance. Reflecting on this, you realize how such quiet acts of desperation ripple through history. The servants of Tudor England, though forgotten, shaped the manors that housed the powerful. Their resilience, born of necessity, laid the groundwork for a society that endured upheaval. Today, we might see their lives echoed in the unsung labor that sustains our own world and scene, yet indispensable. What other secrets did these walls hold, and how did they shape the lives of those who toiled within? Story 2, Endless Toil. In an ancient Roman villa picture, yourself awakening in the dim, cool confines of a slave's quarters in a sprawling Roman villa. Nestled in the rolling hills of Campania, around 100 CE, the air carries the scent of olive oil and freshly baked bread from the nearby kitchen, mingling with the faint temps of sweat. You are one of many servie slaves who keep this estate running for its wealthy owner, a patrician named Lucius, who spends his days in Rome or lounging in the villa's atrium. Your sleeping space is a cramped cell off the courtyard, a thin straw mat on the stone floor, your only comfort. As dawn breaks, you rise, your tunic stiff with yesterday's grime, and begin the day's labor, knowing no rest awaits until nightfall. Your first task is to tend the villa's hypocaust system, the underfloor heating that warms the master's private rooms. You crawl into the narrow space beneath the floor, brushing away soot and checking the clay tiles for cracks. The furnace, fed by bundles of wood you hauled from the estate's forest, must burn steadily to maintain the luxurious warmth the family demands. Your hands, scarred from years of handling rough logs, move quickly to avoid burns. This task, though critical, is invisible to the household. Your existence is defined by such unseen efforts. The villa, with its frescoed walls and mosaic floors, thrives on the labor of dozens like you cooks, cleaners, gardeners, and field hands, all bound by chains or debt. By mid-morning, you shift to the olive groves. Campania's soil yields abundant olives, pressed into oil, sold across the empire. You carry baskets to collect the harvest, climbing ladders to shake fruit from branches, your back aching under the sun. The overseer, a freedman with a whip at his belt, watches closely, noting any whose slaves like you often captives from distant provinces like Gaul or Syria, have no rights. Your life belongs to Lucius. Meals are simple barley porridge, watered wine, and perhaps a handful of olives if the harvest is plentiful. Scurvy and fatigue are common, though you've learned to chew wild greens to ease your bleeding gums. The villa's daily life reveals Rome's rigid hierarchy. You glimpse the family in the triclinium, reclining on couches as they dine on dormice and imported figs, while you sweep the courtyard or scrub wine stains from amphora. Social bonds among slaves are fragile. Friendships form in whispered moments, but betrayal looms some in form on others for extra rations. You've heard of slaves saving coins to buy freedom, but the price is steep, often 600 denarii, a sum you could never earn. Escape is riskier. The fugitive Arius, a slave catcher, roams with dogs, and captured runaways face branding or crucifixion. As you pause to drink from a clay cup, you notice a tension in the villa. The master's steward mutters about a poor harvest, blaming lazy workers. Whispers spread of a slave caught hiding olives to sell in the market. Such acts of defiance are rare but dangerous, threatening the delicate balance of this estate. What might happen if this theft is uncovered, and how could it ripple through the villa's ordered world? The sun climbs higher over the Campanian villa, and you, a slave in Lucius's household, feel the weight of the day intensify. The olive harvest continues, and your hands are stained green from picking, the juice seeping into cuts earned from thorns. The overseer's shadow looms as he paces the grove, his whip coiled but ever present. You move faster, filling baskets to avoid his wrath, though exhaustion makes your limbs heavy. The villa's wealth depends on this oil, shipped to markets in Ostia or even Alexandria, yet you see none of its profits. Your reward is survival, another day of porridge and a corner to sleep in. Beyond the groves, the villa hums with activity. You're called to the Colina, the kitchen, to haul water from the cistern for the cooks. The stone basin is slick with moss, and the bucket's rope bites into your palms. The cooks, themselves slaves, prepare lavish meals for the family roasted peacock, Molsom's wheatened wine, and honeyed cakes, while you knead coarse barley dough for the slave's bread. The contrast is stark. The family's triclinium glows with lamplight and laughter, while the slave's quarters are dark, the air thick with the smell of unwashed bodies and damp stone. You've learned to savor small acts of resistance, like slipping an extra olive into your mouth, though discovery would mean a lashing. The villa's hierarchy is relentless. The steward, a freedman named Gaius, rules the slaves with cold efficiency, reporting directly to Lucius. He tallies every basket of olives, every amphora filled, and notes any shortfall. You've seen him favor certain slaves, those who flatter or inform, granting them lighter tasks, like tending the garden's roses instead of the back-breaking work in the fields. You keep your head down, avoiding his gaze, but you hear whispers of discontent. A fellow slave, a Briton named Caratacus, speaks of rebellion in hushed tones, his eyes glinting with defiance. Such talk is dangerous. The memory of Spartacus's revolt, though decades past, still haunts the Roman elite. The broader world creeps into the villa's isolation. Lucius, visiting from Rome, speaks of Emperor Trajan's campaigns in Dacia, demanding more taxes to fund legions. The villa's output must increase, piling pressure on you and your peers. You overhear talk of market prices falling due to a glut of Spanish oil tightening the household's resources. Fewer rations are distributed, and you notice the cooks thinning the porridge with water. Survival strategies emerge. You trade a mended sandal with another slave for a scrap of dried fish, or hide a handful of grain to roast later. The rumor of the stolen olives grows louder. By dusk, as you clean the press room, its stone wheels slick with oil residue, steward confronts Karatakis. A small sack of olives is found beneath his mat, evidence of his plan to sell them in the nearby town. The other slaves watch in silence, fear and relief mingling. Punishment looms, but what form will it take, and how will it reshape the fragile trust among the villa's workers? Night falls over the Roman villa, and you, a slave in Lucius's household, feel the weight of Karatakis's fate settle over the estate. The air is cool now, the scent of olive oil lingering as you scrub the press room's stone floor. Your knees soar against the unyielding surface. The confrontation over the stolen olives has left the slaves subdued, their usual murmurs replaced by tense silence. You light a clay lamp, its weak flame casting shadows on the walls, and prepare for the master's judgment, knowing it will ripple through your world. Your life, tethered to the villa's rhythms, hinges on obedience. Yet, Karatakis's act of defiance has stirred something in you, a flicker of rebellion or fear. You cannot yet tell. The next morning, Lucius arrives from Rome, his toga crisp, his face stern. In the courtyard, under the gaze of the household, Karatakis is brought forward, hands bound. The steward presents the sack of olives, evidence of his crime. Lucius, mindful of his authority, decrees a punishment, 20 lashes and a month in the ergastulum, the villa's underground prison. You watch as the whip falls, each crack echoing, and Karatakis's silence speaks louder than any cry. He's led away, and you return to your tasks, hauling wood, sweeping mosaics, knowing the villa's order has been restored, but at a cost. Trust among the slaves frays. You avoid meeting others' eyes, fearing accusation or betrayal. The villa's life resumes, but the incident exposes its fragility. You notice the overseer watching more closely, the steward counting every amphora twice. The harvest continues, and you labor under the sun, your body aching as you fill baskets with olives. Meals remain sparse, porridge and watered wine, but you've learned to hoard small treasures, a crust of bread, a handful of herbs bartered with a kitchen slave. These acts, like Karatakis's theft, are survival, not greed. The villa's wealth, built on your toil, feeds Rome's markets, yet you remain bound, your freedom a distant dream. Manumission is rare. Only a few, like the steward, earn it through years of loyalty. The broader Roman world shapes your existence. Trajan's wars drain resources, and Lucius demands more oil to offset costs. You hear of unrest in distant provinces, whispers of slaves joining bandit groups in the hills. The villa, though, is your universe, its walls both prison and protection. Without it, you face the wilderness or the fugitive Arius's chains. You adapt, learning to mend tools or weave baskets to trade for favors. Your resilience, a quiet defiance against despair. Karatakis's punishment lingers in memory, a warning of the cost of rebellion. Yet, His act reflects the unseen struggles of countless slaves whose labor built Rome's grandeur. Their lives, unrecorded in history's annals, were the empire's foundation. Today, we might see parallels in those who toil, invisibly migrant workers, service staff whose efforts sustain our world. What other acts of quiet resistance shaped Rome, and how did they echo through the centuries? Story 3: Quiet Struggles of a Medieval Serf on a Manor Estate. Imagine yourself waking to the distant crow of a rooster in the year 1250 on a sprawling manor estate in the English Midlands. The air is damp and heavy with the scent of wet earth and wood smoke as you stir on a straw-stuffed sack in a one-room wattle and daub hut. You are a serf, bound to the land of a minor lord named Sir William, whose stone-walled manor house looms over the village. Your life is one of endless toil, tied to the rhythms of the seasons and the demands of the manor. As dawn breaks, you pull on a rough woolen tunic, patched from years of wear, and step into the chill morning to begin your duties. Your first task is to tend the fields, the heart of the manor's economy. You trudge to the open fields, where strips of land are divided among the village's serfs. Today, you plow a furrow with an ox-drawn ard, the wooden plow's iron tip scraping through the heavy clay soil. Your hands grip the handles tightly, muscles straining as the ox lumbers forward. The manor depends on your barley and rye crops to feed both the Lord's household and the village, with a portion owed to Sir William as rent. Failure to meet this quota could mean extra labor or worse, fines paid in precious grain. By mid-morning, you join other serfs in the common pasture, checking the sheep for signs of murrain, a disease that could devastate the flock. Wool is the manor's wealth, sold to merchants in nearby Coventry, but you see none of the profit. Your meals are meager pottage of peas and onions, a hunk of dark bread, and weak ale brewed from barley scraps. Scurvy gnaws at your gums in winter when greens are scarce, though you've learned to forage for wild garlic along the hedgerows. The manor's rules are strict. You cannot leave without the Lord's permission, and even marriage requires his approval, often with a fee. Life as a serf is a delicate balance of obligation and survival. You owe the Lord several days of week work each week, plowing, sowing, or repairing fences on top of tending your own strip of land. The manor court, held in the Lord's hall, enforces these duties. And you've seen neighbors fined for neglecting tasks or cutting wood from the Lord's forest without leave. Yet the village offers a faint sense of community. You share tools with others, and at night, you gather around a fire to tell tales of saints or outlaws like Robin Hood, whispered to avoid the bailiff's ears. As you pause to sharpen your sickle, you overhear murmurs of discontent. The Lord has demanded extra labor to repair a bridge damaged by spring floods, cutting into time needed for your own harvest. A serf named Godwin, known for his sharp tongue, speaks quietly of refusing the work. Such defiance is rare and risky in a world where the Lord's word is law. What might happen if Godwin's words spread, and how could they challenge the manor's fragile order? The sun rises higher over the manor estate, and you, a serf in Sir William's domain, feel the weight of the day's demands intensify. The year is still 1250, and the fields stretch endlessly before you, their furrows demanding your attention. You guide the ox through another strip of land, the plow catching on stones hidden in the soil. Sweat beads on your forehead, mixing with dust, as you pause to wipe it away with a ragged sleeve. The Lord's bailiff, a grim man with a tally stick, watches from a distance, ensuring every serf fulfills their week work. Your own plot, where you grow barley for your family, lies neglected, and the thought of a poor harvest gnaws at you. After plowing, you're sent to the manor's mill to deliver grain for grinding. The miller, a freeman who pays rent to Sir William, takes a portion of every sack as his fee, leaving you with less to feed your children. The mill's wooden gears creak as you haul the heavy sacks, your shoulders aching. Back at the village, you join the women spinning wool in the shade of an oak, their fingers deftly twisting fibers into thread for the Lord's cloth. You repair a broken spindle, bartering your skill for a share of their pottage. Food is survival. You've learned to stretch meals with foraged nettles or a stolen turnip from the Lord's garden. Though discovery risks a fine, the manor's hierarchy is rigid. Sir William, rarely seen, lives in the stone manor house, its chimney puffing smoke from a hearth you'll never warm by. The bailiff and reeve, chosen from wealthier serfs, enforce his will, collecting rents and settling disputes in the manor court. You've seen neighbors lose livestock for failing to pay taxes or for grazing sheep on the Lord's pasture without leave. Community binds you, those shared labor in the fields or a quiet prayer in the village church, its walls painted with fading saints. Yet resentment simmers. Godwin's talk of refusing the bridge repair spreads, whispered over shared ale. Some nod, others fear the consequences, recalling a serf flogged last year for hiding grain. The wider world shapes your life. The Third Crusade's shadow lingers, with taxes draining the manor to fund King Henry III's ambitions. Wool prices fluctuate, and Sir William pushes for more shearing to offset losses. You hear of revolts in distant towns, where serfs demand fewer labor days. Such ideas are dangerous here. The manor court could strip you of your land or send you to the stocks. Still, you adapt, trading a mended hoe for a scrap of cheese or hiding a few eggs to barter at market by dusk. As you mend a fence near the flooded stream, Godwin gathers a few serfs, his voice low but firm, urging them to delay the bridge work. The bailiff's shadow looms nearby, his ears sharp. If Godwin's plan takes hold, what might it mean for the manor's fragile balance? And how will Sir William respond to this quiet rebellion? Night settles over the manor estate, and you, a serf in Sir William's domain, sit by a small fire in your hut, the year still 1250. The flickering light casts shadows on the earthen walls, and the scent of burning wood mixes with the damp of the evening. Your hands, calloused from the day's plowing and mending, rest briefly as you chew a crust of rye bread saved from your meager supper. Godwin's whispered plan to resist the bridge repair lingers in your mind, a spark of defiance that threatens the manor's order. You've seen the bailiff's watchful eyes, and you know the consequences of rebellion could be dire. The next morning, the manor court convenes in Sir William's hall, its timbered ceiling echoing with the bailiff's accusations. Godwin stands before the Lord, his face defiant yet pale. Word of his plan reached the reeve, betrayed by a fearful serf hoping for favor. The evidence is thin, few serfs heard his talk. No work was refused, but Sir William, eager to maintain control, decrees punishment. Godwin must pay a fine of 3 bushels of barley, half his harvest, and labor an extra day each week for a month. You watch as he nods, shoulders slumped, knowing his family will go hungry. The court disperses, and you return to the fields, the plow heavier in your hands. The manor's life resumes its rhythm, but Godwin's punishment casts a shadow. You notice serfs working in silence, wary of speaking freely. The bridge repair begins, and you haul stones from the riverbank, your back aching as you stack them under the bailiff's gaze. The manor depends on this bridge for trade, carrying wool to market, yet your labor yields no reward beyond survival. You stretch meals with foraged herbs, and when a sheep strays, you share its milk with a neighbor. A quiet act of solidarity in a world of scarcity. The broader medieval world presses on the manor. Taxes for King Henry III's wars drain resources, and Sir William demands more wool to cover losses. You hear of uprisings in other shires, where serfs burn charters or flee to towns, seeking freedom as burgesses. Here, escape is a dream. The manor's boundaries are your prison, enforced by law and custom. Yet you persist, mending tools to trade for a scrap of cloth or hiding a handful of grain for lean times. Your resilience, a silent protest against despair. Godwin's failed rebellion reveals the serf's unseen strength. Your labor plowing, shearing, buildings stains the manor, yet history rarely records your names. The manor system, with its rigid bonds, shaped medieval England, its wealth built on your toil. Today, we might see echoes in those who labor unnoticed: farm workers, cleaners, whose efforts uphold society. Godwin's defiance, though crushed, hints at the slow stirrings of change that would one day erode serfdom. What other quiet struggles, unrecorded, fueled the tides of history? Story for daily drudgery for a Victorian housemaid in London picture. Yourself rising in the pre-dawn gloom of a London townhouse in 1875. The air sharp with coal dust and the faint temps flickering outside. You are a housemaid, one of several servants in the home of a prosperous merchant, Mr. Charles Whitmore, whose family resides in a fashionable Bloomsbury Square. Your attic room, shared with another maid, is cramped, its sloped ceiling leaking in heavy rain. The thin mattress on your iron bedstead offers little comfort, and your worn cotton dress, darned countless times, clings to your skin as you rise to begin the day's labor. The house, with its polished mahogany and gleaming brass, depends on your unseen work to maintain its elegance. Your morning starts with the grates. You kneel before the drawing room fireplace, brushing away yesterday's ashes, your hands blackened as you lay kindling and coal. The fire must be lit before the family wakes, warming the rooms where they'll sip tea and read the Times. You move silently, avoiding the creak of floorboards, as waking the mistress, Mrs. Whitmore, early could earn a sharp rebuke. Next, you haul buckets of water from the basement pump to fill the copper in the scullery, where linens soak in lye. The water sloshes, chilling your hands, already raw from scrubbing. A housemaid's work is relentless cleaning, polishing, and fetching, yet invisible, unless a speck of dust betrays you by mid-morning. You're polishing the silver cutlery, the repetitive motion numbing your fingers. The butler, Mr. Jenkins oversees the servants with a stern eye, noting every smudge. Your wages, about £12 a year, are paid quarterly, barely enough for a new pair of boots, and you rely on the mistress's cast-off shawls for warmth. Meals are plain bread, dripping, and weak-eaten in the servants' hall, while the family dines on roast beef and blancmange upstairs. You've learned to pocket a crust or a bruised apple from the pantry. Though theft risks dismissal, the household reflects Victorian London's rigid class structure. You address the family as Sir or Madam, eyes downcast, and never speak unless spoken to. The Whitmores live comfortably, their wealth tied to trade. Yet you hear grumbling about rising costs and foreign competition. The city hums beyond the square minibus's clatter. Street vendors call but your world is this house, its routines your cage. Servants share quiet moments, whispering of dances at the local hall or a cousin who emigrated to America. But friendships are cautious. The butler might report gossip to gain favor as you dust the parlor's ormolu clock. You overhear the cook muttering about a missing jar of preserves noticed during breakfast preparations. Suspicion falls on the servants, and tension ripples through the basement. Such accusations are common, but dangerous, threatening the fragile trust among you. What might happen if the theft is traced, and how could it disrupt the polished order of this Victorian household? The morning wears on in the Whitmore household, and you, a housemaid in this Bloomsbury townhouse of 1875, feel the day's weight settle into your bones. The coal fires now blaze, but your tasks multiply. You scrub the marble steps leading to the front door, the cold stone numbing your knees through your thin apron. The brush's bristles wear down as you scour, ensuring no speck of London's grime mars the entrance. Upstairs, you make the beds, smoothing starched linens and plumping feather pillows for the family's comfort. Your movements are swift but silent. Mrs. Whitmore, reading in her boudoir, expects perfection, and a creased sheet could mean a docked wage. The kitchen is a hive of activity, where you fetch trays for the cook, who's preparing luncheon mutton chops and boiled potatoes for the family. The smell tempts you, but your meal, shared with other servants, is a thin soup and stale bread. You've learned to stretch it, hiding a crust in your pocket or sipping extra tea when the butler isn't looking. Wages are meager, and with no family nearby, you save every penny, dreaming of a day off to visit the market or a rare letter from a sister in the country. The city's bustle factory whistles, horse-drawn cabs feels distant, your life confined to these walls. The household's hierarchy is unyielding. The butler, Mr. Jenkins, rules the servants, his ledger tracking every task. You've seen him favor the parlor maid who flatters him, assigning her lighter duties like dusting the library while you scrub floors. Resentment simmers in the servants' hall, where you whisper with the scullery maid about the unfairness. Yet you tread carefully. A footman was sacked last month for arguing with the housekeeper. You've heard tales of servants joining unions or fleeing to factories. But such risks feel daunting when a roof and meal are certainties. Here, Victorian London's pressures seep into the house. Mr. Whitmore, anxious about trade tariffs, demands economies fewer coals for the servants' fire, thinner soup. You overhear talk of the Great Depression of 1873, squeezing merchants like him. The servants bear the brunt. You mend your own stockings to save pennies, And when a glove tears, you trade mending skills with another made for a scrap of soap. Survival is a quiet art, honed in small acts of thrift and barter. The missing jar of preserves casts a shadow. By afternoon, as you polish the dining room's chandelier, the housekeeper questions each servant. Suspicion falls on Sarah, the scullery maid, who was seen near the pantry. She denies it, her voice trembling, but the butler's gaze is cold. The household's order hinges on trust, yet this accusation threatens to unravel it. If Sarah is found guilty, what punishment awaits, and how will it reshape the delicate balance of this tightly wound home? Evening descends on the Whitmore townhouse, and you, a housemaid in this London home of 1875, sit briefly in the servants' hall, mending a torn apron by candlelight. The air is heavy with the scent of wax and the day's lingering coal smoke. Your hands, raw from scrubbing, move stiffly, and your mind is on Sarah, the scullery maid accused of stealing the jar of preserves. The accusation has fractured the servants' fragile camaraderie, and you sense the household teetering on edge. The routine cleaning grates, polishing silver, hauling water continues, but suspicion lingers like a stain. The next morning, Mrs. Whitmore summons the servants to the drawing room. The jar, found hidden in Sarah's trunk, seals her fate. Sarah, barely 16, weeps, claiming she took it to send to her starving sister in Whitechapel. The mistress, unmoved, dismisses her without a reference, a sentence that could mean the workhouse or worse in London's crowded slums. You watch, silent, as Sarah gathers her few belongings, her footsteps echoing down the back stairs. The butler's stern warning to the rest of you: work harder. Stay on strings in your ears as you return to sweeping the parlor. The broom's rhythm, a grim reminder of order restored. The household settles, but the incident leaves scars. You notice the cook guarding the pantry more closely, and the butler checks your work twice, his trust eroded. You scrub floors, make beds, and carry coal, your body aching, yet you dare not complain. Meals remain sparse bread and dripping, with tea watered down to stretch it. You hoard small comforts, like a broken biscuit from the family's tea tray, shared with another maid in secret. Survival means caution. You mend your cap to avoid buying a new one, trading a darned sock for a bit of candle wax to light your attic room. Victorian London's wider struggles shape the house. The Whitmores, squeezed by economic downturns, cut costs, leaving you with thinner blankets and fewer fires. You hear of strikes in factories and servants forming associations, but such ideas feel distant when dismissal looms for a single mistake. The city's poverty beggars at street corners, cholera in the slums, reminds you that this job, grueling as it is a lifeline. You persist, bartering skills or hiding a scrap of soap. Your resilience, a quiet defiance against despair. Sarah's dismissal underscores the precariousness of your life. Servants like you, unseen and unrecorded, kept Victorian homes gleaming, their labor propping up the empire's social order. Yet your struggles, hunger, exhaustion, fear mirror those of countless others, from factory workers to street vendors. Sarah's act of desperation, though punished, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered beneath the era's polished surface. Today, we see echoes in those who toil in low-wage jobs, their work essential yet overlooked. What other silent acts of survival shaped Victorian England, and how did they ripple into our modern world? Story 5. The Unseen Hands in an Egyptian Pharaoh's Palace. Imagine yourself stirring awake in the pre-dawn stillness of a mud-brick dormitory in Thebes, Egypt, around 1350 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Akhenaten. The air is thick with the scent of dust and the faint aroma of baking bread from the palace kitchens nearby. You are a servant in the royal palace, one of countless workers, bakers, brewers, weavers who sustain the opulence of the pharaoh's court. Your sleeping mat, woven from reeds, lies on the packed earth floor, shared with others whose snores echo in the dimness. As the first light of Ra touches the Nile's banks, you rise, your linen kilt stiff with sweat and sand, and begin the day's labor. Your first task is to fetch water from the Nile, a short walk from the palace complex. You carry a clay jar balanced on your shoulder, its weight familiar but heavy as you navigate the riverbank's muddy path. The water, cool and silty, is vital for the palace used in cooking, cleaning, and the rituals that honor the gods. Back at the kitchens, you pour it into storage jars, careful not to spill, as waste could earn an overseer's rebuke. The palace thrives on your labor, its alabaster halls and lotus-painted columns gleaming for the pharaoh, his queen Nefertiti, and their court, while you remain invisible, a shadow among the sandstone. By mid-morning, you're in the bakery, kneading dough for emmer wheat bread, the staple of both nobles and servants. Your hands, calloused from grinding grain on a stone quern, work the sticky mass, the heat of the clay ovens searing your face. The palace consumes hundreds of loaves daily, served with honey to the elite, or plain to workers like you. Your meals are simple bread, onions, and beer brewed from barley, with occasional dates if the harvest is generous. Malnutrition is a constant threat. You chew garlic to ward off illness, a trick learned from older servants. The palace reflects Egypt's rigid hierarchy. You bow low when nobles pass, their linen robes and gold amulets, a world apart from your coarse kilt. The overseer, a scribe named Thamos, tracks your work with a papyrus ledger, his reed pen scratching as he counts loaves or jars. You've heard of servants whipped for laziness or sent to labor in the quarries, a fate worse than death. Community exists in stolen moments, shared laughter over a beer ration, or tales of the gods, but trust is fragile. Some curry favor by reporting others' mistakes. As you carry a basket of bread to the priest's quarters, you overhear whispers of unrest. A servant, Hemunu, was caught hiding a handful of grain, likely to feed his hungry children. The palace depends on absolute obedience, and such theft threatens its order. What might happen if Hemunu's act is exposed? And how could it ripple through the intricate web of the pharaoh's court? The sun climbs higher over Thebes, and you, a servant in Pharaoh Akhenaten's palace in 1350 BCE, feel the day's heat intensify. The bakery's ovens radiate warmth, and your brow drips as you shape loaves, the dough sticking to your fingers. The scent of baking bread fills the air, a stark contrast to the dusty corridors where you carry baskets to the priest's chambers. Your kilt, damp with sweat, chafes against your skin, and your back aches from hours bent over the quern. The palace's grandeuret's painted walls depicting Aten's raised the pens on your toil. Yet you remain unseen, a cog in Egypt's divine machine. Your next task takes you to the weaving rooms, where you fetch flax for the women spinning linen for the pharaoh's robes. The looms clack rhythmically as you haul bundles of raw fiber, your arms straining. The linen, fine enough for royalty, contrasts with your coarse kilt, patched from years of use. You pause to drink warm beer from a clay cup, its bitterness familiar but sustaining. Food is scarce for servants. You've learned to pocket a few dates or barter a mended basket for a scrap of fish. The Nile's bounty feeds the elite, but you rely on cunning to supplement your rations. The palace's hierarchy is unrelenting. Thamos, the scribe overseer, patrols with his ledger, his coal-lined eyes missing nothing. You bow when he passes, avoiding his gaze, as a sharp word could mean extra labor or a cut in rations. Some servants whisper of favoritism. Those who offer gifts, like a woven mat, get lighter tasks, such as tending the palace gardens. You've heard tales of workers escaping to the desert, but the risks are high. Capture means flogging or worse, labor in the gold mines. Bonds form in quiet moments, like sharing a hymn to Osiris. But betrayal lurks, some report missteps to curry favor. Egypt's wider world shapes the palace. Akhenaten's devotion to Aten, the sun disk, has appended tradition, and priests mutter about neglected gods like Amen. The palace buzzes with preparations for a festival to Aten, demanding more bread, beer, and linen from you and your peers. You overhear scribes discussing poor harvests in the delta, straining the palace's stores. Rations shrink, and you notice the cooks diluting the beer. Survival demands ingenuity. You trade a repaired sandal for a handful of barley, hiding it beneath your mat. The rumor of Hemunu's stolen grain grows louder. By dusk, as you sweep the courtyard's sand, Thamos confronts him near the granary. A small sack of emmer is found hidden in a storage jar. Hemunu's face pales, his silence damning. The other servants watch, fear and relief mingling as the overseer's voice rises. Punishment is certain, but what form will it take, and how will it shift the delicate balance of this divine household? Night falls over the palace in Thebes, and you, a servant in Akhenaten's court of 1350 BCE, pause in the dim dormitory, the air heavy with dust and the faint scent of Nile mud. Your hands, sore from kneading dough and hauling flax, tremble as you sip beer from a chipped cup. Hemunu's theft of grain, uncovered in the granary, hangs over the servants like a storm cloud. The palace, with its golden statues and incense-filled halls, depends on your obedience. Yet this act of desperation threatens its harmony. You sweep the bakery floor, the broom's rhythm steadying your nerves, as you await the overseer's judgment. The next morning, Thamos gathers the servants in the courtyard, the sun glinting off the palace's alabaster walls. Hemunu stands, head bowed, as the scribe announces his punishment: 10 lashes and reassignment to the quarry gangs, a grueling fate. You wince as the whip falls. Hemunus gasps, echoing, then watch him led away, his family left to fend for themselves. The overseer's warning is clear: obedience is absolute. You return to the bakery, shaping loaves with mechanical precision. But the air feels heavier, trust among the servants frayed. You avoid whispers, fearing another betrayal. The palace resumes its rhythm, but Hemunu's fate lingers. You knead dough, fetch water, and sweep courtyards, your body aching under the weight of endless tasks. Rations remain sparse bread, onions, beer, but you hoard small gains, like a bruised fig traded for mending a loom. The palace's wealth, from linen to grain, sustains Akhenaten's vision of Aten's glory, but you see none of it. Freedom is a myth. Even manumission, rare for palace workers, requires years of favor you cannot afford. You persist, bartering a woven cord for a scrap of papyrus. Your resilience, a quiet defiance. Egypt's broader struggles shape your life. Akhenaten's religious reforms, elevating Aten above traditional gods, strain the palace's resources, with festivals demanding more labor. Poor harvests, whispered among scribes, tighten rations, and you notice thinner bread loaves. Beyond the palace, the Nile's floods dictate survival, and you hear of villages starving when the river fails. Your world is the palace, its walls both shelter and prison, where escape risks death in the desert or capture by royal guards. Hemunu's punishment reveals the unseen hands that built Egypt's glory. Servants like you, unrecorded in hieroglyphs, fed the pharaohs, wove their robes, and cleaned their halls. Your labor underpinned an empire, yet your struggles, hunger, fear, exhaustion went unseen. Today we see echoes in those who toil in obscurity, their work sustaining society's grandeur. Hemunu's desperate act, though crushed, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered in ancient hearts. What other unseen hands shaped Egypt's legacy, and how do their echoes resonate in our world? Story 6. Monotonous duties of a samurai's retainer in feudal Japan. During the Sengoku period, around 1560 CE, the air carries the faint scent of cedar and rice straw, mixed with the distant aroma of miso simmering in the kitchen. You are a retainer, a low-ranking servant bound to Lord Takeda, a samurai lord whose modest estate hums with the quiet discipline of feudal life. Your sleeping space is a thin futon rolled out on the floor, shared with other retainers in a cramped annex. As dawn breaks, you rise, folding your futon with care, and don a simple hemp cassode, its fabric worn but clean. Before beginning the day's duties, your first task is to tend the Lord's armor, stored in a wooden chest in the main hall. You polish the iron plates of his yoroi, brushing away dust and checking the silk cords for fraying. The armor, though rarely used in these tense but peaceful months, must be ready for battle, a symbol of Lord Takeda's status. Your hands, calloused from years of labor, move methodically, ensuring no rust tarnishes the metal. This task, though repetitive, is vital. A retainer's diligence upholds the household's honor, and a mistake could mean a sharp reprimand, or worse, by mid-morning. You're in the courtyard, sweeping the gravel paths smooth, the rake's rhythm steady under the watchful eye of the steward, a senior retainer named Hiroshi. The estate depends on you and others, cooks, grooms, and cleaners, to maintain its order. You fetch water from a nearby well, the bamboo bucket heavy as you carry it to the kitchen for rice washing. Meals for retainers are sparse rice, pickled radish, and weak tea, while the Lord dines on fish and miso soup. Hunger is familiar. You've learned to chew wild greens to stave off weakness, a habit picked up from older servants. The household reflects Japan's rigid hierarchy. You bow low when Lord Takeda passes, his katana gleaming at his side, and speak only when addressed. Retainers like you, often from peasant families, serve for protection and meager pay, perhaps a few koku of rice yearly. Bonds form in quiet moments, sharpening tools with another retainer, or sharing tales of Kappa spirits, but loyalty to the Lord comes first. Disobedience risks banishment or, in extreme cases, ritual punishment. You've heard of retainers fleeing to become ronin, masterless samurai, but the life of an outcast is perilous. As you carry firewood to the bathhouse, you overhear murmurs of tension. A young retainer, Kenji, was caught pocketing a small measure of rice, likely to feed his ailing mother. The steward's sharp ears caught the rumor, and suspicion spreads among the household. Such an act threatens the samurai's code of honor, which binds even the lowliest servant. What might happen if Kenji's theft is confirmed, and how could it disrupt the disciplined order of Lord Takeda's estate? The sun rises higher over Lord Takeda's estate in Edo, 1560 CE, and you, a retainer, feel the weight of your duties intensify. The courtyard gravel is swept, but now you're tasked with cleaning the stable, mucking out straw damp with horse dung. The air is thick with dust and the sharp scent of manure, and your hemp cassode clings to your sweat-soaked skin. You haul buckets of water to scrub the wooden stalls, your arms aching under the load. The horses, vital for the samurai's campaigns, demand care, and a single oversight could draw the steward Hiroshi's wrath, perhaps costing you a day's rice ration. Next, you're sent to the kitchen to assist with rice preparation. You rinse the grains in a wooden tub, your fingers numb from the cold well water, while the cook prepares the Lord's meal, grilled eel and bamboo shoots. Your own meal, shared with other retainers, is plain rice and a sliver of pickled plum, eaten in silence to avoid the steward's notice. You've learned to stretch your rations, hiding a handful of rice or trading a mended sandal for a dried fish from another servant. Hunger is a constant companion, eased only by foraging for wild herbs when you can slip away. The samurai household is a world of strict order. Lord Takeda, rarely seen, commands absolute loyalty, his presence marked by the clink of his katana. Hiroshi, the steward, enforces discipline, his tally of tasks ensuring no moment is idle. You've seen him favor older retainers, granting them lighter duties, like tending the garden's koi pond, while you scrub floors or haul firewood. Whispers of discontent ripple through the retainers' quarters, where you share a rare laugh over a tale of a fox spirit. Yet, trust is fragile. Some curry favor by reporting slights, and you've heard of a retainer banished for questioning an order. Feudal Japan's tensions seep into the estate. The Sengoku period's wars loom, with rival clans vying for power. Lord Takeda, you overhear talk of poor harvests in nearby villages, tightening rations further. The cook dilutes the miso soup, and you notice thinner rice portions. Survival requires cunning. You barter a sharpened knife for a scrap of cloth, hiding it beneath your futon for future trade. The rumor of Kenji's rice theft grows louder. By dusk, as you polish the Lord's lacquered saddle in the armory, Hiroshi confronts Kenji in the courtyard. A small cloth bundle, tucked in his cassode, reveals the stolen rice. Kenji's eyes are downcast, his silence damning under the steward's glare. The other retainers watch, fear and relief mingling. as the household's honor hangs in the balance. What punishment will Lord Takeda decree, and how will it reshape the fragile loyalty within this samurai estate? Night settles over Lord Takeda's estate in Edo, 1560 CE, and you, a retainer, sit in the dim annex, the air heavy with the scent of tatami and fading wood smoke. Your hands, rough from polishing armor and hauling water, rest briefly as you sip weak tea, its bitterness sharp. Kenji's theft of rice, uncovered in the courtyard, casts a shadow over the household. The samurai's code of Bushido demands honor, even from lowly retainers like you. And this breach threatens the estate's harmony. You sweep the armory floor, the broom's rhythm calming your unease. As you await Lord Takeda's judgment, the next morning, the household gathers in the main hall, its shoshi screens filtering the pale light. Kenji stands before Lord Takeda, his head bowed, the stolen rice bundle at his feet. The Lord, his face stern beneath his topknot, declares the punishment. 10 strokes with a bamboo rod and banishment from the estate. You watch as Kenji endures the blows in silence, then is escorted out. His fate uncertain, perhaps a Ronin's life or starvation in a distant village. Hiroshi's warning to the retainers is clear. Loyalty is paramount. You return to your tasks cleaning stables, rinsing rice with a heavier heart. Trust among the servants fractured. The estate's rhythm resumes, but Kenji's absence lingers. You polish the Lord's katana, fetch water, and sweep paths, your body weary from endless labor. Meals remain meager rice and pickled radish, but you hoard small gains, like a dried plum traded for mending a kasode. The estate's wealth, tied to rice and loyalty, sustains Lord Takeda's power, but you see no share of it. Freedom is a distant dream. Release from service requires years of favor or a lord's rare mercy, neither of which you expect. You persist, bartering a sharpened tool for a scrap of seaweed. Your resilience, a quiet defiance. The Sengoku period's turmoil shapes the estate. Rival clans threaten war, and Lord Takeda demands more rice to arm his samurai, straining the stores. You hear of famines in nearby provinces, where peasants starve or turn bandit. The estate is your world, its walls both shelter and prison, leaving risks, death, or capture. Yet, you adapt, hiding a few grains beneath your futon, or sharing a stolen radish with a fellow retainer. Small acts of survival in a rigid system. Kenji's punishment reveals the unseen labor that upheld feudal Japan. Retainers like you, unrecorded in chronicles, cleaned armor, fed households, and maintained order, enabling samurai glory. Your struggles, hunger, fear, exhaustion mirror those of countless others, their lives the foundation of an era. Today, we see parallels in those who toil unnoticed, their work sustaining society's structure. Kenji's desperate act, though punished, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered beneath Bushido's surface. What other unseen efforts shaped Japan's warrior age, and how do they echo in our modern world? Story 7. Harsh realities for a plantation worker in colonial America. Imagine yourself waking before dawn in a rough-hewn cabin on a Virginia tobacco plantation in 1700. The air thick with the scent of damp wood and earth. You are an indentured servant, bound to Master John Carver for 7 years to repay your passage from England. Your bed is a straw pallet on a dirt floor, shared with 3 others. They're restless, stirring a constant disturbance. As the first light creeps through the cabin's chinks, you rise, pulling on a threadbare linen shirt, patched from months of wear, and step into the chill morning to begin your toil. Your first task is in the tobacco fields, where rows of green plants stretch across the tidewater soil. You hoe weeds from between the stalks, the wooden handle blistering your hands, already calloused from daily labor. Tobacco is the plantation's lifeblood, shipped to London for profit, and your work ensures its yield. The overseer, a stern man named Hawkins, watches from horseback, his whip coiled but ever present. A slow pace could earn a lashing, or a cut in your meager rations, cornmeal mush and a scrap of salt pork. Eaten hastily in the shade, by mid-morning you're sent to the curing barn, hauling heavy tobacco leaves to hang for drying. The air is heavy with the plant's sharp, earthy smell, and your lungs burn from dust. The plantation depends on you and dozens of others, indentured servants and enslaved Africans whose labor fuels the colony's wealth. Your contract promises freedom and a small plot of land after 7 years, but many die before their term ends, worn out by disease or exhaustion. You've learned to chew sassafras leaves to ease hunger, a trick shared by a fellow servant. The plantation reflects colonial Virginia's brutal hierarchy. You bow your head when Master Carver passes, his fine waistcoat a stark contrast to your ragged clothes. Indentured servants like you, often poor English or Irish, work alongside enslaved workers, though tensions simmer. Some servants distance themselves, hoping to curry favor. Community forms in quiet moments, sharing a pipe of cheap tobacco or whispering tales of escape, but trust is fragile. Runaways face recapture, flogging, or extended servitude. And you've heard of servants branded for theft. As you carry a load of firewood to the big house, you overhear murmurs of unrest. A servant named Thomas, desperate after a harsh winter, was caught hiding a handful of cornmeal, likely to feed his sick wife. The overseer's sharp eyes noticed the missing grain, and suspicion ripples through the workers. Such an act threatens the plantation's rigid order, where every ounce of food is counted. What might happen if Thomas's theft is confirmed, and how could it disrupt the fragile balance of this tobacco empire? The sun climbs higher over the Virginia plantation in 1700, and you, an indentured servant under Master Carver, feel the day's heat intensify. The tobacco fields shimmer with haze as you top the plants, pinching off buds to strengthen the leaves. Your hands, sticky with sap, ache from the repetitive work, and sweat stings your eyes. The overseer, Hawkins, rides by, his whip a silent threat, ensuring no one pauses too long. Your contract binds you to this labor, but the promise of freedom feels distant when malaria and dysentery claim so many. You push on, knowing a single misstep could extend your servitude. Next, you're sent to the kitchen yard to fetch water from a creek, the bucket's rope cutting into your palms. The water is for washing dishes in the big house, where the Carver family dines on ham and cornbread, while you and the others share watery porridge and a scrap of bacon rind. You've learned to stretch your rations, hiding a bit of cornmeal in your pocket, or trading a mended shirt for a wild persimmon from another servant. Hunger is constant. You chew sassafras roots to dull it, a habit shared in hushed exchanges to avoid Hawkins's notice. The plantation's hierarchy is unforgiving. Master Carver, rarely seen, rules from his paneled study, while Hawkins enforces order among the workers. You've noticed him favor some servants, granting them lighter tasks like tending the garden, while you toil in the fields or barns. Bonds among workers are tentative. You share a pipe or a story of England's green hills, but suspicion lingers. Some indentured servants snub the enslaved, hoping to elevate themselves, while others whisper of running to the frontier. Though capture means brutal punishment, whippings, or branding, colonial Virginia's pressures shape the plantation. Tobacco prices fluctuate in London, and Carver demands higher yields, pushing you harder. You overhear talk of conflicts with native tribes and rising taxes to fund the colony's militia. The plantation's stores dwindle after a poor harvest, and rations shrink. Your porridge thins, the bacon rind disappears. Survival demands cunning. You barter a sharpened hoe for a scrap of cloth, or hide a few corn kernels to plant in a secret patch, hoping for extra food. The rumor of Thomas's stolen cornmeal grows louder. By dusk, as you stack firewood near the curing barn, Hawkins confronts him in the workers' quarters. A small sack of meal is found beneath his pallet, evidence of his desperation. Thomas's eyes are downcast, his wife's illness no excuse in the overseer's view. The other workers watch in silence, fear and relief mingling, as the plantation's order teeters. What punishment will Master Carver impose, and how will it reshape the fragile trust among the laborers? Night falls over the Virginia plantation in 1700, and you, an indentured servant, sit in the dim cabin, the air heavy with the scent of damp straw and tobacco dust. Your hands, raw from topping plants and hauling water, rest briefly as you chew a hard crust of cornbread saved from supper. Thomas's theft of cornmeal, uncovered beneath his pallet, hangs over the workers like a storm cloud. The plantation, with its sprawling fields and Master Carver's grand house, thrives on your labor, but this breach threatens its rigid order. You mend a torn breeches patch by candlelight, the flickering flame steadying your nerves. As you await the master's judgment the next morning, Master Carver gathers the workers in the yard, his waistcoat crisp against the rising sun. Thomas stands, head bowed, as Hawkins presents the stolen cornmeal. Carver, his voice cold, decrees the punishment. 15 lashes. You wince as the whip cracks, Thomas's grunts echoing, then watch him stumble back to the cabin, his freedom further delayed. Hawkins's warning to the rest of you obey, or face worse sinks in as you return to the fields, hoeing with renewed caution. Trust among the workers phrase. You avoid sharing even a pipe, fearing betrayal. The plantation's rhythm resumes, but Thomas's punishment lingers. You hang tobacco leaves in the curing barn, fetch water, and mend fences, your body aching from ceaseless toil. Rations remain sparse cornmeal mush, sometimes a sliver of pork butt. You hoard small gains, like a wild apple traded for a mended shoe. The plantation's wealth, shipped to England, enriches Carver, but your contract's promise of land feels hollow when survival is uncertain. Freedom is a dream. Many indentured servants die of fever or exhaustion, their terms unfulfilled. You persist, bartering a sharpened tool for a scrap of cloth. Your resilience, a quiet defiance. Colonial Virginia's broader struggles shape the plantation. falling tobacco prices and trade disputes with England push Carver to demand more yield, straining the workers. You hear of Unrest Bacon's rebellion a generation ago, where servants and enslaved rose up only to be crushed. The frontier tempts some, but runaways face capture or death in the wilderness. The plantation is your world, its fields, both prison and shelter, where survival hinges on small acts of cunning, like hiding a few corn kernels for a secret meal. Thomas's punishment reveals the unseen labor that built colonial America. Workers like you, indentured or enslaved, tilled the fields and fueled an empire's wealth. Yet your struggles, hunger, fear, exhaustion went unrecorded. Today we see echoes in those who toil in obscurity, their work sustaining society's foundations. Thomas's desperate act, though punished, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered in colonial hearts. What other unseen struggles shaped the New World, and how do their echoes persist in our time? Story 8. Silent Service. In a Renaissance Italian palazzo, imagine yourself stirring awake in the dim, cool confines of a servant's quarters in a Florentine palazzo around 1520 CE, during the height of the Renaissance. The air carries the scent of olive oil and wax from candles burned late in the master's study. You are a servant in the household of Signor Lorenzo de Rossi, a wealthy merchant whose grand residence, with its frescoed walls and marble floors, stands in the heart of Florence. Your bed is a straw pallet tucked in a cramped alcove, shared with other maids. As dawn filters through a narrow window, you rise, slipping into a worn linen shift, and begin the day's labor. Your first task is to light the fires in the palazzo's hearths. You kneel before the grand fireplace in the sala, striking flint to ignite kindling, your hands chilled by the stone floor. The flames must warm the rooms before Signore Lorenzo and his family awake, their comfort your priority. You haul wood from the courtyard stack, the rough bark scraping your palms, and sweep the ashes, careful not to smudge the polished tiles. The palazzo's elegance depends on you and dozens of others, cooks, grooms, and cleaners whose work is unseen but essential. By mid-morning, you're in the scullery, scrubbing pots with sand and vinegar, the acrid smell stinging your nose. Eaten in the servants' hall is coarse bread and watered wine. Hunger lingers. You've learned to pocket a crust or chew wild fennel from the garden to ease it. Wages are meager, perhaps a few soldi monthly, paid irregularly, and you mend your own clothes to save coin. Dreaming of a market day to buy a ribbon. The palazzo reflects Florence's rigid hierarchy. You curtsy when Signor Lorenzo passes, his velvet doublet a world apart from your patched shift. The steward, Messer Antonio, oversees the servants, his ledger tracking every task. You've seen him favor some, granting lighter duties, like dusting tapestries, while you scrub floors. Bonds form in quiet moments, sharing a story of St. Francis or a jest about the Medici, but trust is fragile. Some report slights to gain favor. Leaving the palazzo is rare. You're bound by contract and custom, and runaways risk imprisonment. As you polish a silver candelabra in the dining hall, you overhear whispers of unrest. A scullery maid, Maria, was caught hiding a small loaf of bread, likely to feed her hungry brother. The steward's sharp eyes noticed the missing loaf, and tension ripples through the servants' quarters. Such theft threatens the Palazzo's order, where every resource is counted. What might happen if Maria's act is confirmed, and how could it disrupt the delicate balance of this Renaissance household? The sun rises higher over the Florentine Palazzo in 1520, and you, a servant in Signor Lorenzo's household, feel the day's demands intensify. The hearths are lit, but now you're scrubbing the marble floors of the sala, the cold stone numbing your knees through your thin shift. You wield a coarse brush, the lye soap burning your hands as you erase every trace of dust. The Palazzo's beauty, yet a single smudge could earn Messer Antonio's scolding. You move quickly, mindful of the steward's watchful eye, his quill poised over his ledger. Next, you're sent to the kitchen to fetch wine from the cellar, navigating narrow stone steps with a heavy jug. The cooks prepare a feast for Signor Lorenzo's guest venison and candied fruits, while your midday meal is a scrap of bread and a sip of sour wine, eaten in the dim servants' hall. You've learned to stretch your rations, hiding a crust in your apron or trading a mended kerchief for a fig from the garden. Hunger is constant, eased only by chewing fennel leaves when the steward isn't looking. Your wages, irregularly paid, barely cover a pair of worn shoes. The Palazzo's hierarchy is strict. Signore Lorenzo, rarely seen, commands from his study, his wealth tied to trade with Venice and Milan. Messer Antonio enforces order, favoring servants who flatter him with small gifts like a woven cord, granting them lighter tasks such as arranging flowers. You scrub and haul, resentment simmering as you overhear whispers of unfairness in the servants' quarters. Bonds form over shared tasks, polishing silver or sweeping courtyards, but betrayal lurks. A footman was dismissed last month for gossiping about the master's debts. You've heard of servants fleeing to join artists' workshops, but the risk of capture looms large. Florence's Renaissance splendor shapes the Palazzo. The city buzzes with artists like Michelangelo and merchants vying for Medici favor. But economic strains trade wars, and taxes tighten Signore Lorenzo's purse. You notice fewer candles lit, and the cooks dilute the wine. Survival demands ingenuity. You barter a darned stocking for a scrap of cheese, or hide a few olives in your alcove, risking punishment. The Palazzo's opulence hides its fragility. Dependent on your unseen labor, the rumor of Maria's stolen bread grows louder. By dusk, as you sweep the courtyard's flagstones, Messer Antonio confronts her in the kitchen. A small loaf is found tucked in her basket, evidence of her desperation. Maria's eyes plead, but the steward's face. The other servants watch in silence, fear and relief mingling as the Palazzo's order teeters. What punishment will Signore Lorenzo decree, and how will it reshape the fragile trust within this glittering household? Night falls over the Florentine Palazzo in 1520, and you, a servant in Signor Lorenzo's household, sit in the dim alcove, the air heavy with the scent of wax and olive oil. Your hands, raw from scrubbing floors and polishing silver, rest briefly as you mend a torn shift by candlelight. Maria's theft of a loaf, uncovered in the kitchen, casts a shadow over the servants' quarters. The Palazzo, with its frescoed halls and gilded candelabras, thrives on your labor, but this breach threatens its polished order. You sweep the Salas tiles, the broom's rhythm steadying your unease, as you await the master's judgment the next morning. Signore Lorenzo gathers the servants in the courtyard, his velvet cloak stark against the dawn's light. Maria stands, head bowed, as Messer Antonio presents the stolen loaf. Lorenzo, his face stern, decrees her punishment, a public reprimand and dismissal without pay, condemning her to Florence's crowded streets. Maria weeps, claiming the bread was for her starving brother, but the master's word is final. You watch her gather her meager belongings, her footsteps fading down the palazzo steps. Antonio's warning to the rest of you obey, or face worse secos as you return to polishing brass. Trust among the servants fractured. The palazzo's rhythm resumes, but Maria's absence lingers. You scrub marble, fetch wine, and mend linens, your body aching from endless tasks. Meals remain sparse bread and watered wine, but you hoard small gains, like an olive traded for a mended apron. The palazzo's wealth, tied to trade, enriches Lorenzo, but your wages barely buy a scrap of cloth. Freedom is a dream. Servants are bound by contract, and escape risks imprisonment or worse. You persist, bartering a darned sock for a bit of cheese. Your resilience, a quiet defiance against despair. Florence's Renaissance world shapes the palazzo. Trade disputes with Venice and taxes for PayPal wars strain Lorenzo's coffers, and you notice fewer feasts, thinner rations. The city buzzes with art and ambition, but servants whisper of guilds forming, demanding better wages. The palazzo is your world, its walls both shelter and prison, where survival hinges on small acts like hiding a crust for lean days. You avoid the steward's gaze, fearing another accusation. Maria's punishment reveals the unseen labor that sustained Renaissance Florence. Servants like you, unrecorded in chronicles, polished its grandeur and fed its elite. Your struggles, hunger, fear, exhaustion hidden beneath the city's splendor. Today, we see echoes in those who toil in obscurity, their work upholding society's shine. Maria's desperate act, though punished, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered in Renaissance hearts. What other silent labors shaped Florence's golden age, and how do their echoes resonate in our modern world? Story 9: Relentless Toil in an Industrial Revolution. Factory. Imagine yourself waking to the shrill clang of a bell in a cramped tenement in Manchester, England, in 1830, at the heart of the Industrial Revolution. The air is heavy with coal, smoke, and the sour smell of unwashed bodies in a room shared with a dozen others. You are a factory worker, employed in a cotton mill owned by Mr. James Hargreaves, a wealthy industrialist. Your bed is a thin straw mattress on a splintered floor, and as the pre-dawn chill bites, you pull on a patched shirt and trousers, stiff with grime, and hurry to the mill before the 5 a.m. shift begins. Your first task is scavenging cotton scraps from beneath the spinning mules, the massive machines that hum and clatter in the mill's cavernous hall. You crawl on hands and knees, dodging the worry belts, your fingers raw from brushing against rough iron. The cotton dust coats your throat, making you cough, but you must keep pace. The overseer, Mr. Baxter, patrols with a strap, quick to punish. The mill produces thread for England's textile empire, and your labor long with hundreds of others, including children, keeps it running. By mid-morning, you're tending the mules, tying broken threads as they snap. The heat from the machines and the lack of ventilation makes sweat drip into your eyes. Your wages, a few shillings a week, barely cover rent and bread, and meals are meager rote, porridge, and weak tea eaten during a brief break. Malnutrition is common. You chew on a crust saved from yesterday to stave off hunger, a trick learned from older workers. Injuries are frequent: fingers caught in machinery, lungs scarred by dust butt, stopping risks dismissal. The mill reflects Manchester's brutal hierarchy. You avert your eyes when Mr. Hargreaves visits his fine coat, a stark contrast to your ragged clothes. The overseer enforces strict rules, docking pay for tardiness or talking. Community forms in stolen moments, sharing a sip of ale or a tale of rural life before the city, but trust is fragile. Some workers inform on others for extra rations. Leaving the mill is a dream. Poverty traps you. A worker named Eliza, desperate after a pay cut, was caught hiding a spool of thread, likely to sell for food. The overseer's sharp eyes noticed the missing spool, and tension spreads among the workers. Such theft threatens the mill's rigid order, where every thread is accounted for. What might happen if Eliza's act is confirmed, and how could it disrupt the relentless rhythm of this industrial machine? The sun struggles through Manchester's smog in 1830, and you, a factory worker in Mr. Hargreaves's cotton mill, feel the day's grind deepen. The spinning mules roar, and you dart between them, tying broken threads with fingers raw from cotton lint. The air is thick with dust, stinging your eyes and throat, and the heat from the machines soaks your patched shirt with sweat. The overseer, Mr. Baxter, paces the floor, his strap a constant threat, ensuring no one slows the mill's relentless pace. Your 12-hour shift feels endless, each minute eroding your strength. Next, you're sent to the carding room, where you clean the machine's teeth, clogged with cotton fibers. The sharp metal pricks your hands, and the noise drowns out thought. You pause for a brief lunch, stale bread, and a sip of watery tea shared in the mill's damp basement with other workers. Wages, barely enough for rent, leave no room for more. You've learned to hide a crust in your pocket, or trade a mended cap for a bruised apple from a fellow worker. Exhaustion is constant, and you chew dandelion leaves, scavenged from the mill yard to dull hunger. The mill's hierarchy is merciless. Mr. Hargreaves, rarely seen, rules from his office, his wealth built on your toil. Mr. Baxter favors some workers, granting them lighter tasks like oiling machines, while you face the grueling mules. You overhear grumbling in the basement, workers sharing tales of rural freedom before the mill's butt. Fear keeps voices low. A girl was sacked last week for whispering about wages. Some speak of unions forming in secret, but joining risks dismissal, or worse, blacklisting across Manchester's mills. The Industrial Revolution's pressures shape the mill. Demand for cotton surges, but falling prices force Hargreaves to cut wages, sparking quiet resentment. You hear of cholera outbreaks in the slums and strikes in nearby mills, crushed by constables. The mill's stores tighten. Your tea is weaker, the bread thinner. Survival demands cunning. You barter a sharpened knife for a scrap of cloth, or hide a few cotton scraps to sell, risking Baxter's strap if caught. The mill's wealth depends on your unseen labor, yet you remain trapped in its grind. The rumor of Eliza's stolen thread grows louder. By late afternoon, as you sweep lint from the mule frames. Mr. Baxter confronts her near the carding room. A spool is found tucked in her shawl, evidence of her desperation. Eliza's face pales, her plea of hunger ignored. The other workers watch in silence, fear and relief mingling as the mill's order hangs in the balance. What punishment will Mr. Hargreaves impose, and how will it reshape the fragile trust among the workers in this deafening factory? Night cloaks Manchester's cotton mill in 1830, and you, a factory worker, sit in the tenement's dim room, the air thick with coal dust and damp. Your hands, raw from tying threads and cleaning machines, tremble as you chew a stale crust saved from lunch. Eliza's theft of a thread spool, uncovered in the carding room, looms over the workers, threatening the mill's relentless order. The machine's hum lingers in your ears, and you mend a torn shirt by candlelight, its flicker steadying your nerves. As you await Mr. Hargreaves's judgment the next morning, Mr. Baxter gathers the workers in the mill yard, the sky gray with smog. Eliza stands, head bowed, as the overseer presents the stolen spool. Mr. Hargreaves, his face stern in his fine coat, decrees her punishment, dismissal without pay and a report to the magistrate, risking the workhouse. Eliza's sobs echo as she's escorted out, her plea of a starving family ignored. Baxter's warning to the rest of you: work harder, stay honest, cuts deep as you return to the spinning mules, their clatter drowning your thoughts. Trust among workers, phrase. You avoid sharing even a sip of tea, fearing betrayal. The mill's rhythm resumes, but Eliza's absence lingers. You tie threads, sweep lint, and clean carding machines, your body aching from the 12-hour shift. Meals remain sparse porridge and weak tie, but you hoard small gains, like a bruised apple traded for a mended glove. The mill's wealth, spun into thread for England's markets, enriches Hargreaves, but your shillings barely cover rent. Freedom is a dream. Poverty binds you, and the workhouse awaits the jobless. You persist, bartering a sharpened tool for a scrap of cloth. Your resilience, a quiet defiance. The Industrial Revolution's grind shapes the mill. Falling cotton prices and competition from new mills push Hargreaves to demand longer hours, straining workers. You hear of strikes crushed in nearby towns and cholera ravaging tenements. Rations dwindle, tea is thinner, bread scarcer. The mill is your world, its machines both prison and livelihood, where survival hinges on small acts like hiding a cotton scrap to sell. You work in silence, wary of Baxter's strap and informants among the workers. Eliza's punishment reveals the unseen labor that fueled the Industrial Revolution. Workers like you, unrecorded in history, spun the threads of empire. Your struggles, hunger, exhaustion, fear, hidden beneath Manchester's smoke. Today, we see echoes in those who toil in low-wage jobs, their work sustaining industry's wealth. Eliza's desperate act, though punished, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered in factory hearts. What other silent struggles powered the mills, and how do their echoes shape our modern world? Story 10. A peasant farmer's toil in ancient China's Han Dynasty. Imagine waking to the faint crow of a rooster in a mud-walled hut in rural Hunan, China. During the Han Dynasty, around 100 CE, the air is damp with the scent of rice paddies and straw, mingling with the smoke of a dying hearth. You are a peasant farmer, bound to a small plot of land under the local Lord Master Way, whose estate looms nearby. Your bed is a straw mat on an earthen floor, shared with your family, their breathing a soft rhythm in the dark. As dawn breaks, you rise, slipping into a patched hemp tunic, and step into the cool morning to begin your labor. Your first task is in the rice fields, knee-deep in muddy water, planting seedlings in neat rows. Your hands, calloused from years of toil, sink into the silt, and your back aches from bending. The harvest feeds both your family and Master Way, who claims a third of your yield as taxes. A poor crop could mean hunger or debt, and the overseer, a stern man named Liang, checks your work, his bamboo rod a silent threat. You pause only to drink from a gourd, the water tepid but vital in the rising heat by mid-morning. You're repairing a wooden plow, its blade worn from breaking the heavy soil. The village depends on your rice and millet, traded for cloth or tools, but most goes to the Lord or the Emperor's granaries. Your meals are simple millet porridge and wild greens, sometimes a sliver of dried fish if the harvest was good. Scurvy threatens in lean months. You chew sour plums, a trick learned from elders to ease it. Tools break often, and you mend them with scraps, saving your few bronze coins for taxes. The village reflects the Han's rigid hierarchy. You bow low when Master Wei's litter passes, his silk robes a world apart from your rough tunic. Peasants like you labor for survival, while officials collect taxes for the Emperor's wars and canals. Community forms in shared work, threshing grain or repairing irrigation ditches, but trust is fragile. Some report neighbors' shortfalls to gain favor. Leaving the land is forbidden without permission, and runaways face flogging or conscription into the army. As you carry a basket of seedlings to the field, you overhear whispers of unrest. A farmer named Chen was caught hiding a small sack of millet, likely to feed his starving children. Liang's sharp eyes noticed the missing grain, and tension ripples through the village. Such theft challenges the Lord's authority, where every grain is counted. What might happen if Chun's act is confirmed? And how could it disrupt the fragile order of this rural Han community? The sun rises higher over the Henan village in 100 CE, and you, a peasant farmer under Master Wei, feel the day's heat intensify in the rice paddies. You transplant seedlings, your feet sinking into the mud, the sticky silt clinging to your patched tunic. Your back aches from hours of bending, and sweat stings your eyes, but you dare not pause. The overseer, Liang, watches from the field's edge, his bamboo rod tapping his palm. The harvest is your lifeline, yet much of it will go to the Lord's storehouse, leaving your family with barely enough to survive the winter. Next, you're tasked with repairing an irrigation ditch, hauling stones to shore up its banks. The work is grueling, your hands scraped raw by the rough edges, but water is life for the rice fields. You pause for a midday meal millet porridge and a few wild greens eaten under a tree with other farmers. Hunger gnaws. You've learned to hide a handful of millet or barter a mended basket for a dried plum. The village's survival depends on shared labor, but scarcity breeds caution. You guard your small hoard, fearing theft or discovery. The Han dynasty's hierarchy binds the village. Master Wei, rarely seen, rules from his walled estate his wealth built on your crops. Liang enforces taxes and labor, favoring those who offer gifts a woven mat or extra grain with lighter tasks, like tending mulberry trees. You overhear grumbling during a break, farmers sharing tales of freer lives before heavy taxes, but fear of Liang's rod keeps voices low. Some whisper of rebellions in distant provinces, but such thoughts are dangerous. Informers among the farmers could report you, risking flogging or conscription. The empire's demands shape your life. Emperor Zhang's wars and canal projects drain the village's grain. And you hear of poor floods this year, threatening the harvest. Rations shrink, porridge thins, fish vanishes. Survival demands cunning. You trade a repaired hoe for a scrap of cloth or hide a few millet grains beneath your mat, risking punishment. The village is your world, its fields both sustenance and prison, where leaving without permission means capture or worse. The rumor of Chun's hidden millet grows louder. By dusk, as you stack harvested stalks in the communal barn, Liang confronts him near the granary. A small sack is found under a pile of straw, evidence of Chen's desperation. His face pales, his plea of hungry children ignored. The other farmers watch in silence, fear and relief mingling as the village's order teeters. What punishment will Master Wei impose, and how will it reshape the fragile trust among the peasants in this ancient agrarian world? Night settles over the Henan village in 100 CE, and you, a peasant farmer, sit in your mud-walled hut, the air thick with straw and the faint smoke of a dying fire. Your hands, raw from planting rice and hauling stones, rest as you sip watery millet porridge, its warmth a small comfort. Chun's theft of millet, uncovered in the granary, hangs over the village like a storm. The fields, feeding Master Wei's estate and the Han Emperor's coffers, depend on your labor, but this breach threatens their order. You mend a torn tunic by lamplight, its flicker calming your nerves. As you await the Lord's judgment the next morning, Master Wei gathers the farmers in the village square, his silk robes gleaming under the dawn. Chen stands, head bowed, as Liang presents the stolen sack. Wei, his voice cold, decrees the punishment: 10 lashes and a doubled tax on Chun's harvest, crippling his family. You wince as the bamboo rod falls, Chen's grunts echoing. Then watch him stumble back to his hut, his children's hunger unaddressed. Liang's warning: obey, or lose your land sinks in as you return to the fields, planting with renewed caution. Trust phrase. You avoid sharing greens, fearing betrayal. The village's rhythm resumes, but Chun's punishment lingers. You transplant rice, repair ditches, and thresh grain, your body aching from endless toil. Meals remain sparse porridge and wild herbs, but you hoard small gains, like a plum traded for a mended basket. The estate's wealth, built on your crops, enriches Wei, but your bronze coins barely cover taxes. Freedom is a myth. Peasants are tied to the land, and escape risks conscription or execution. You persist, bartering a sharpened hoe for a scrap of hemp. Your resilience, a quiet defiance. The Han dynasty's pressures shape the village. Emperor Zhang's campaigns and infrastructure drain grain, and poor floods threaten scarcity. You notice thinner porridge, fewer plums. Whispers of the Yellow Turban Rebellion stir in distant regions, but defiance here means death. The fields are your world, both sustenance and prison, where survival hinges on cunning like hiding a few grains for lean days. You work in silence, wary of Liang's rod and informers among the farmers. Chen's punishment reveals the unseen labor that sustained the Han dynasty. Peasants like you, unrecorded in histories, fed the empire. Your struggles, hunger, fear, exhaustion, hidden beneath its glory. Today, we see echoes in those who toil unnoticed, their work upholding society's foundations. Chun's desperate act, though crushed, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered in peasant hearts. What other silent struggles shaped ancient China, and how do their echoes persist in our world? Story 11: Grueling Labor in a Medieval European Monastery. Imagine waking in the chill darkness of a stone dormitory in a Benedictine monastery in northern France. Around 1200 CE, the air is damp, heavy with the scent of wool and faint incense from the chapel. You are a lay brother, a laborer bound to the monastery, serving the monks who dedicate their lives to prayer. Your bed is a straw pallet on a cold floor, shared with other lay brothers, their snores echoing off the walls. As the bell tolls for lauds, you rise, pulling on a coarse woolen tunic, patched from years of use, and begin your day's toil. Your first task is in the fields, hoeing rows of barley under the gray dawn. Your hands, calloused from digging, grip the wooden handle, and your breath clouds in the frosty air. The harvest feeds the monks, the poor, and the monastery's coffers, but a poor yield could mean lean months for all. The overseer, Brother Anselm, a stern monk, watches closely, noting any you pause only to sip water from a clay jug, careful not to waste a drop, as negligence could earn a reprimand or extra prayers as penance. By mid-morning, you're in the scriptorium's yard, hauling firewood for the monks' hearths. The logs are heavy, splintering your palms, but warmth is vital for their copying of manuscripts. Your meals are simple barley bread and watered ale, eaten in the refectory with other lay bros, while the monks dine on stewed vegetables. Hunger lingers. You've learned to chew wild sorrel from the fields, to ease it, a trick shared by an older brother. Your labor earns no wages, only shelter and food, and you mend your own tunic to save scraps. The monastery reflects medieval Europe's rigid order. You bow when Abbot Gerard passes his robes, pristine compared to your rough tunic. Lay brothers like you, often peasants, work to free the monks for prayer, your lives bound by vows of obedience. Community forms in shared tasks, tending fields or cleaning stables, but trust. Some report idleness to gain favor. Leaving the monastery is forbidden without permission, and runaways face excommunication or imprisonment. As you carry a basket of barley to the granary, you overhear murmurs of unrest. A lay brother named Simon was caught hiding a small loaf of bread, likely to feed his starving kin in a nearby village. Brother Anselm's sharp eyes noticed the missing loaf, and tension ripples through the dormitory. Such theft challenges the monastery's sacred order, where every resource is counted. What might happen if Simon's act is confirmed, and how could it disrupt the fragile harmony of this holy community? The sun climbs higher over the monastery in northern France, 1200 CE, and you, a lay brother, feel the day's labor intensify. The barley fields are hoed, but now you're in the orchard, pruning apple trees with a rusty knife, the blade nicking your calloused hands. The fruit will feed the monks and be pressed into cider for market. But a single misstep could draw Brother Anselm's sharp rebuke. Your woolen tunic, damp with sweat, clings to your skin as you haul pruned branches to a pile. The work relentless, under the overseer's watchful eye. Next, you're sent to the brewery, stirring vats of fermenting ale, the sour smell filling the air. Your arms ache from the heavy paddle, but the ale sustains the monastery's economy. Lunch is a brief pause, barley bread, and a sip of watered aletin in the refectory's dim light with other lay brothers. Hunger persists. You've learned to pocket a crust or trade a mended sandal for a wild apple. The monks eat better, their stew thickened with herbs, while your rations shrink in lean seasons, forcing reliance on foraged sorrel or nettles. The monastery's hierarchy is unyielding. Abbot Gerard, rarely seen, rules from his cloister, his prayers supported by your toil. Brother Anselm favors some lay brothers, granting them lighter tasks like tending beehives, while you face grueling fieldwork. You overhear grumbling during a break, tales of freer lives before vows, but fear of Anselm's discipline keeps voices low. Some whisper of peasant revolts in distant villages, but such thoughts are perilous. Informers among the brothers could report you, risking penance or expulsion. Medieval Europe's struggles shape the monastery. Poor harvests and tithes to the local lord strain resources, and you notice thinner bread and less ale. The monks' manuscripts, copied for noble patrons, fund the abbey, but your labor in fields and brewery makes it possible. Survival demands cunning. You barter a sharpened tool for a scrap of cloth or hide a few barley grains, risking Anselm's wrath. The monastery is your world, its stone walls both shelter and prison, where escape means facing bandits or starvation. The rumor of Simon's stolen bread grows louder. By dusk, as you stack firewood in the courtyard, Brother Anselm confronts him near the bakery. A small loaf is found tucked in his satchel, evidence of his desperation. Simon's eyes plead, his kin's hunger no excuse. The other lay brothers watch in silence, fear and relief mingling as the monastery's sacred order teeters. What punishment will Abbot Gerard impose, and how will it reshape the fragile trust among the laborers in this holy enclave? Night falls over the Benedictine monastery in northern France, 1200 CE, and you, a lay brother, sit in the dim dormitory, the air thick with wool and fading wood smoke. Your hands, raw from pruning trees and stirring ale, rest as you chew a stale crust, saved from lunch. Simon's theft of a loaf, uncovered in the bakery, casts a shadow over the lay brothers. The monastery, with its soaring chapel and illuminated manuscripts, thrives on your labor, but this breach threatens its sacred order. You mend a torn tunic by candlelight, its flicker calming your unease, as you await Abbot Gerard's judgment. The next morning, the lay brothers gather in the cloister, the stone arches cold under dawn's light. Simon stands, head bowed, as Brother Anselm presents the stolen loaf. Abbot Gerard, his face stern, decrees the punishment: 7 days of fasting and expulsion from the monastery, condemning Simon to a life of begging or banditry. Simon's plea for his starving kin falls on deaf ears, and you watch him trudge out, his satchel slung over his shoulder. Anselm's warning obedience is divine echoes as you return to the fields. hoeing with renewed caution, trust among the brothers fractured. The monastery's rhythm resumes, but Simon's absence lingers. You prune orchards, haul wood, and clean stables, your body aching from ceaseless toil. Meals remain sparse bread and ale, but you hoard small gains, like a wild apple traded for a mended belt. The monastery's wealth, from crops and manuscripts, sustains the monks' prayers, but you earn only shelter. Freedom is a dream. Lay brothers are bound by vows, and escape risks excommunication. You persist, bartering a sharpened knife for a scrap of wool. Your resilience, a quiet defiance. Medieval Europe's hardships shape the monastery. Poor harvests and feudal tithes shrink rations, and you notice thinner bread, less ale. Whispers of peasant uprisings reach the cloister, but defiance here means expulsion or worse. The monastery is your world, its walls both refuge and prison, where survival hinges on cunning, like hiding a few barley grains for lean days. You work in silence, wary of Anselm's gaze and informers among the brothers. Simon's punishment reveals the unseen labor that upheld medieval monasteries. Lay brothers like you, unrecorded in chronicles, fed the monks and fueled their sacred work. Your struggles, hunger, fear, exhaustion hidden beneath the abbey's sanctity. Today, we see echoes in those who toil unnoticed, their work sustaining society's foundations. Simon's desperate act, though punished, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered in medieval hearts. What other silent labors shaped the age of faith, and how do their echoes persist in our world? Story 12: Unseen Struggles of a Mughal Court Servant in 17th century India. Waking in the pre-dawn stillness of a cramped servants' quarter in the Mughal Emperor's palace in Agra, India, around 1650 CE, during Shah Jahan's reign. The air is thick with the scent of sandalwood. You are a Khadim, a low-ranking servant in the imperial court, tasked with maintaining its splendor. Your bed is a thin cotton mat on the stone floor, shared with other Khadims, their murmurs blending with distant calls to prayer. As dawn nears, you rise, donning a patched cotton kurta, and begin your day's labor. Your first task is sweeping the marble floors of the Duanyam, the public audience hall where the emperor meets his subjects. You wield a straw broom, careful not to mar the inlaid gemstones, your hands rough from years of toil. The palace's grandurates, arched domes, and filigreed screens depends on your work. But a single smudge could earn a lash from the overseer, Mirza Khan, a stern noble. You pause to sip water from a clay pot, the coolness fleeting in the rising heat. Knowing every moment is watched by mid-morning, you're in the royal kitchens, hauling sacks of rice for the cooks preparing the emperor's feast biryani with saffron and almonds. Your own meal, eaten in a dim corner, is plain roti and lentil dal, sometimes a mango if the harvest is generous. Hunger lingers. You've learned to chew neem leaves to dull it, a trick from older servants. Your wages, a few copper dams monthly, barely buy cloth, and you mend your kurta with scraps, saving for a festival day. The palace reflects the Mughal Empire's rigid hierarchy. You bow low when nobles pass, their silk turbans a world apart from your faded kurta. Mirza contracts your tasks with a ledger, his quill scratching as he counts sacks or sweeps. Community forms in quiet moments, sharing a tale of Krishna or a jest about the court, but trust is fragile. Some Khadims report slights for favor. Leaving the palace is rare. You're bound by duty, and runaways face imprisonment, or worse, in Agra's bustling streets. As you carry a tray of lamps to light the emperor's garden, you overhear whispers of unrest. A Khadim named Arjun was caught hiding a small sack of flour, likely to feed his ailing mother. Mirza Khan's sharp eyes noticed the missing grain, and tension ripples through the quarters. Such theft threatens the court's opulent order, where every resource is tallied. What might happen if Arjun's act is confirmed, and how could it disrupt the delicate balance of this imperial palace? The sun climbs higher over the Mughal palace in Agra, 1650 CE, and you, a Khadim, feel the day's heat intensify as you scrub the sandstone steps of the Zenana, the women's quarters. Your hands, raw from sweeping, burn with lime wash, and your patched kurta sticks to your sweat-soaked skin. The palace's beauteous yali screens and lotus carvings relies on your toil. But a missed spot could draw Mirza Khan's lash. You work swiftly, the overseer's ledger ever present, tracking every task to ensure the emperor's court gleams for Shah Jahan's glory. Next, you're sent to the stables, hauling fodder for the emperor's horses, their hooves kicking up dust that chokes your lungs. The bales are heavy, straining your back, but the animals are prized for royal processions. Your midday meal, roti and watery delice, eaten in the servants' yard, shared with other Khadims in silence to avoid Mirza Khan's notice. Hunger persists. You hide a mango pit to plant or trade a mended cloth for a handful of chickpeas. The palace's wealth leaves little for you, and your copper dams barely buy a new sandal. The Mughal court's hierarchy is relentless. Shah Jahan, rarely seen, rules from the peacock throne, his opulence built on your labor. Mirza Khan favors some Khadims, granting them lighter tasks like tending garden fountains while you scrub and haul. You overhear whispers of resentment in the quarter stales of freer lives. Before the palace, but fear of the overseer's whip keeps voices low. Some speak of bandits in the countryside, but fleeing risks capture or death. Bonds form over shared work, yet informers among the Khadims could betray you for favor. The empire's demands shape the palace. Shah Jahan's monuments, like the Taj Mahal, drain resources, and you notice fewer spices in the kitchen, thinner dal for servants. Trade routes to Persia falter, tightening supplies. Survival demands cunning. You barter a sharpened knife for a scrap of cotton, or hide a few grains of rice, risking punishment. The palace is your world, its marble walls both shelter and prison, where every move is watched by Mirza Khan's keen eyes. The rumor of Arjun's stolen flour grows louder. By dusk, as you polish brass lamps in the emperor's garden, Mirza Khan confronts him near the granary. A small sack is found hidden in a storage jar, proof of Arjun's desperation. His face pales, his mother's illness no excuse. The other Khadims watch in silence, fear and relief mingling as the palace's order teeters. What punishment will Shah Jahan's court impose, and how will it reshape the fragile trust within this opulent imperial household? Night falls over the Mughal palace in Agra, 1650 CE, and you, a Khadim, sit in the dim servants' quarter, the air heavy with sandalwood and the faint smell of lamp oil. Your hands, raw from scrubbing steps and polishing lamps, rest as you chew a dry roti saved from dinner. Arjun's theft of flour, uncovered in the granary, looms over the Khedims, threatening the palace's opulent order. The court, with its marble domes and jeweled mosaics, thrives on your labor, but this breach shakes its harmony. You mend a torn kurta by lamplight, its glow steadying your nerves as you await the emperor's judgment. Mirza Khan gathers the Khedims in the courtyard, the dawn glinting off the palace's minarets. Arjun stands, head bowed, as the overseer presents the stolen flower. A noble, acting for Shah Jahan, decrees the punishment, 10 lashes and banishment from the palace, casting Arjun into Agra's crowded streets. His plea for his ailing mother is ignored, and you watch him stagger away, his meager belongings clutched tightly. Mirza Khan's warning loyalty is absolute techos as you return to sweeping. Trust among the Khedims fractured, the palace's rhythm resumes, but Arjun's absence lingers. You scrub floors, haul fodder, and polish brass, your body aching from endless toil. Meals remain sparse roti and dal, but you hoard small gains, like a chickpea traded for a mended cloth. The palace's wealth, from silks to spices, enriches Shah Jahan, but your dams barely by thread. Freedom is a dream. Khedims are bound by duty, and escape risks imprisonment. You persist, bartering a sharpened tool for a mango pit. Your resilience, a quiet defiance. The Mughal Empire's pressures shape the palace. Shah Jahan's grand projects and wars with the Deccan sultans drain resources. And you notice thinner dal, fewer lamps lit. Whispers of peasant revolts reach Agra, but defiance here means death. The palace is your world, its walls both shelter and prison, where survival hinges on cunning like hiding a grain of rice for lean days. You work in silence, wary of Mirza Khan's lash and informers among the Khadim Arjuns. Punishment reveals the unseen labor that sustained the Mughal court. Khadims, like you, unrecorded in chronicles, polished its splendor and fed its elite. Your struggles, hunger, fear, exhaustion hidden beneath its opulence. Today, we see echoes in those who toil unnoticed, their work upholding society's grandeur. Arjun's desperate act, though punished, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered in Mughal hearts. What other silent labors shaped this golden empire, and how do their echoes resonate in our world? Story 13, Drudgery of a Scribe. In ancient Egypt's New Kingdom, imagine waking in the dim light of a mud brick house in Thebes, Egypt, around 1300 BCE, during the New Kingdom's 19th dynasty. The air is thick with the scent of Nile, silt, and straw from your reed mat. Your bed on the packed hearth floor, shared with other scribes' apprentices. You are a junior scribe, serving the temple of Ammon under the overseer Pacer, a priest scribe of high rank. As dawn glows over the river, you rise, slipping into a linen kilt, worn but clean, and begin your day's labor in the bustling temple complex. Your first task is grinding ink from charcoal and ochre, mixing it with water on a stone pallet. Your hands stained black ache as you prepare for copying tax records onto papyrus. The temple's wealth grain, linen, and cattle-dee depends on your precision. But a smudged hieroglyph could earn Pacer's sharp rebuke. You sit cross-legged in the scriptorium, reed pen, scratching, the air heavy with dust and incense. Mistakes are costly. Papyrus is precious, and errors might mean copying prayers. As punishment, by mid-morning, you're sent to the granary to tally grain sacks, the sun scorching your shoulders as you mark tallies on a clay tablet. The temple feeds priests and workers, but your own meal, eaten in a shaded courtyard, is flatbread and a few dates, washed down with warm beer. Hunger lingers. You've learned to chew lotus stems from the Nile to ease it, a trick from older scribes. Your wages, paid in grain, barely cover your family's needs, and you mend your kilt with scraps to save resources. Thebes reflects Egypt's rigid hierarchy. You bow low when priests pass, their shaved heads gleaming, while Pazer's authority looms over you. Scribes like you, trained from childhood, are vital to the temple's records, yet you're far below the elite. Community forms in shared work-sharpening reeds or sharing tales of Anubis, but trust is fragile. Some apprentices report errors to gain favor. Leaving the temple risks losing your status, and runaways face flogging or exile to the desert. As you carry a stack of papyrus to the archive, you overhear whispers of unrest. An apprentice named Hetty was caught hiding a small loaf of bread, likely to feed his hungry sister. Pazer's keen eyes noticed the missing loaf, and tension ripples through the scriptorium. Such theft threatens the temple's sacred order, where every offering is counted. What might happen if Hetty's act is confirmed, and how could it disrupt the delicate balance of this divine bureaucracy? The sun rises higher over Thebes in 1300 BCE, and you, a junior scribe in the Temple of Amun, feel the day's heat intensify as you copy tax records in the scriptorium. Your reed pen scratches on papyrus, your fingers cramped from gripping it, the air thick with dust and the scent of burning oil lamps. Each hieroglyph must be flawless. A mistake could anger Pacer, the overseer, who demands perfection for the temple's accounts. Your linen kilt, damp with sweat, clings to your legs, and you work quickly, fearing a reprimand that could cost you a day's rations. Next, you're sent to the storehouse, counting jars of oil under the scorching sun. The clay is heavy, your shoulders aching as you stack them, each tally scratched on a tablet. The temple's wealth grain oil and linens stains its priests and rituals. But your own lunch, eaten in the courtyard, is flatbread and a handful of dates, shared with other scribes. Hunger gnaws. You hide a date pit to plant or trade a mended sandal for a lotus root. Your grain wages barely feed your family, and every scrap is precious. The temple's hierarchy is unyielding. Priests, adorned with amulets, command reverence, while Pacer favors apprentices who offer small gifts, like a woven reed mat, granting them lighter tasks like sharpening pens. You overhear grumbling in the courtyard tales of freer lives. Before the temple, but fear of Pacer's staff keeps voices low. Some whisper of rebellions in distant gnomes, but Defiance risks flogging or banishment. Bonds form over shared work, yet informers among the apprentices could betray you for favor. The new kingdom's demands shape the temple. Pharaoh Ramesses II's wars and monuments drain resources, and you notice fewer dates, thinner beer. Floods along the Nile falter, threatening harvests, and the priests demand more offerings. Survival demands cunning. You barter a sharpened reed for a scrap of linen, or hide a few grains of wheat, risking punishment. The temple is your world, its colonnades, both shelter and prison, where every stroke of your pen serves Amon's glory. The rumor of Hetty's stolen bread grows louder. By dusk, as you carry clay tablets to the archive, Pacer confronts him near the bakery. A small loaf is found tucked in his satchel, evidence of his desperation. Hetty's eyes plead, his sister's hunger, no excuse. The other scribes watch in silence, fear and relief mingling as the temple's sacred order teeters. What punishment will the priests impose? And how will it reshape the fragile trust among the scribes in this ancient bureaucracy? Night falls over the Temple of Ammon in Thebes, 1300 BCE, and you, a junior scribe, sit in your mud brick house, the air heavy with Nile silt and the faint glow of an oil lamp. Your hands cramped from writing and stacking jars. Rest as you chew a dry flatbread saved from lunch. Hetty's theft of a loaf, uncovered in the bakery, casts a shadow over the scribe's quarters. The temple, with its towering statues and sacred altars, thrives on your precision, but this breach threatens its divine order. You mend a torn kilt by lamplight, its flicker calming your unease. As you await the priest's judgment the next morning, Pacer gathers the scribes in the temple courtyard, the dawn glinting off the obelisks. Hetty stands, head bowed, as the overseer presents the stolen loaf. A high priest, speaking for Amen, decrees the punishment, 7 lashes and banishment from the temple, casting Hetty into Thebes' crowded streets. His plea for his sister's hunger is ignored, and you watch him trudge away, his reed pens left behind. Pacer's warning obedience honors the god Zikos as you return to the scriptorium, writing with renewed caution, trust among the scribes fractured. The temple's rhythm resumes, but Hetty's absence lingers. You copy records, tally grain, and grind ink, your body aching from ceaseless tasks. Meals remain sparse flatbread and dates, but you hoard small gains, like a lotus root traded for a mended cloth. The temple's wealth, from offerings to taxes, sustains the priests, but your grain wages barely feed your kin. Freedom is a myth. Scribes are bound by duty, and escape risks flogging or exile. You persist, bartering a sharpened reed for a scrap of linen. Your resilience, a quiet defiance. The new kingdom's pressures shape the temple. Ramesses II's campaigns and monuments drain grain, and poor Nile floods shrink rations, fewer dates, thinner beer. Whispers of worker strikes in Deir el-Medina reach Thebes, but defiance here means death. The temple is your world, its walls both shelter and prison, where survival hinges on cunning like hiding a wheat grain for lean days. You work in silence, wary of Pacer's staff and informers among the scribes. Hetty's punishment reveals the unseen labor that upheld ancient Egypt. Scribes like you, unrecorded in annals, tallied the wealth that built its glory. Your struggles, hunger, fear, exhaustion, hidden beneath the temple's sanctity. Today, we see echoes in those who toil unnoticed, their work sustaining society's foundations. Hetty's desperate act, though punished, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered in scribal hearts. What other silent labors shaped the land of pharaohs? And how do their echoes persist in our world? Story 14, Toil, of a silk weaver in Tang Dynasty, China imagine, waking in the faint light of a wooden loom house in Chang'an, China, around 750 CE, during the Tang dynasty's peak. The air carries the scent of mulberry leaves and the faint tang of boiled silk cocoons. You are a silk weaver, laboring for Master Li, a wealthy merchant whose workshop supplies the imperial court. Your bed is a reed mat on a packed earth floor, shared with other weavers, their soft breathing mingling with the creak of looms. As dawn breaks, you rise, slipping into a worn hemp tunic, and begin your day's work. Your first task is threading the loom, your fingers deftly guiding silk strands through the heddles. The delicate threads, dyed in vibrant reds and blues, snag easily, and your hands, calloused from years of weaving, tremble with precision. The workshops output brocades for nobles depends on your skill. But a broken thread could earn a sharp rebuke from the overseer Zhang, who paces with a bamboo rod. You pause to sip tepid tea from a clay cup, careful not to stain the silk. As every moment is scrutinized, by mid-morning you're sorting cocoons in the steaming dye vats, the heat stinging your skin. The silk trade fuels Chang'an's wealth, but your wages, a few copper cash, weekly, barely buy rice. Your meal, eaten in the workshop's courtyard, is millet porridge and pickled radish, sometimes a sliver of tofu if the market is kind. Hunger lingers. You chew mulberry leaves to dull it, a trick from older weavers. You mend your tunic with scraps, saving coins for a festival day. The workshop reflects the Tang's rigid hierarchy. You bow low when Master Li passes, his silk robe a stark contrast to your patched tunic. Zhang favors weavers who offer gifts, a woven band or extra cloth with lighter tasks like spinning thread. Community forms in shared work, cleaning looms, or sharing tales of the Silk Road, but trust is fragile. Some report mistakes for favor. Leaving the workshop is rare. You're bound by debt to Li, and runaways face imprisonment in Chang'an's markets. As you carry a bolt of silk to the storeroom, you overhear whispers of unrest. A weaver named Mei was caught hiding a small skein of silk, likely to sell for her sick child. Zhang's sharp eyes noticed the missing thread, and tension ripples through the workshop. Such theft threatens the workshop's order, where every strand is counted. What might happen if Mei's act is confirmed? And how could it disrupt the delicate balance of this silk-weaving enterprise? The sun climbs higher over Chang'an in 750 CE, and you, a silk weaver in Master Li's workshop, feel the day's heat intensify as you work the loom. Your fingers, raw from threading silk, weave intricate patterns. Each shuttle pass demanding precision to avoid snapping the delicate strands. The air is thick with the scent of dye and sweat, and your hemp tunic clings to your skin. A flawed brocade could draw Zhang's bamboo rod, the overseer's presence looming as he checks your progress, ensuring the imperial court's orders are met without delay. Next, you're sent to the dye vats, stirring vats of indigo under the scorching sun. The fumes sting your eyes, and your arms ache from the heavy wooden paddle. But the vibrant hues are vital for the noble's robes. Your midday meal, millet porridge and a few pickled radishes, is eaten in the courtyard, shared with other weavers in hushed silence to avoid Zhang's notice. Hunger persists. You hide a radish to chew later, or trade a mended cloth for a dried persimmon. Your copper cash barely buys rice, making every scrap precious. The workshop mirrors the Tang dynasty's hierarchy. Master Li, rarely seen, profits from your silk. His wealth tied to trade along the Silk Road. Zhang favors weavers who offer bribes, small skein, or a woven cord with tasks like sorting thread while you toil at the loom. You overhear grumbling in the courtyard tales of village life before debt bound you. Here but fear of Zhang's rod keeps voices low. Some whisper of rebellions in distant provinces, but fleeing risks capture or imprisonment in Chang'an's bustling markets. The Tang Empire's demands shape the workshop. The emperor's court and foreign tributes drain silk supplies, and you notice fewer dyes, thinner porridge. Droughts along the Yellow River threaten mulberry trees, tightening resources. Survival demands cunning. You barter a sharpened tool for a scrap of hemp or hide a few silk threads, risking punishment. The workshop is your world. Its looms, both livelihood and prison, where every thread you weave serves the empire's splendor. The rumor of May's stolen silk grows louder. By dusk, as you clean the loom's rollers, Zhang confronts her near the dye vats. A small skein is found tucked in her basket, evidence of her desperation. May's eyes plead, her child's illness, no excuse in Zhang's view. The other weavers watch in silence, fear and relief mingling as the workshop's order teeters. What punishment will Master Li impose, and how will it reshape the fragile trust among the weavers in this vibrant yet grueling enterprise? Night falls over the silk workshop in Chang'an, 750 CE, and you, a weaver, sit in the dim loom house, the air heavy with mulberry and the faint hum of cooling vats. Your hands, raw from weaving and dyeing, rest as you chew a dry radish saved from lunch. May's theft of a silk skein, uncovered near the vats, casts a shadow over the weavers. The workshop, producing brocades for the Tang court, thrives on your skill, but this breach threatens its order. You mend a torn tunic by lamplight, its glow steadying your nerves. As you await Master Li's judgment, the next morning, Zhang gathers the weavers in the courtyard, the dawn glinting off the workshop's tiled roof. May stands, head bowed, as the overseer presents the stolen skein. Master Li, his silk robe gleaming, decrees the punishment: 10 lashes and expulsion from the workshop, casting May into Chang'an's crowded streets. Her plea for her sick child is ignored, and you watch her gather her few belongings, her eyes hollow. Zhang's warning loyalty fuels the loomsicos as you return to weaving, your fingers cautious, trust among the weavers fractured. The workshop's rhythm resumes, but May's absence lingers. You thread looms, stir dye vats, and clean rollers, your body aching from long hours. Meals remain sparse porridge and radishes, but you hoard small gains, like a persimmon traded for a mended cloth. The workshop's wealth, sent to the emperor's court, enriches Li, but your copper cash barely buys rice. Freedom is a dream. Debt binds you, and escape risks imprisonment. You persist, bartering a sharpened tool for a scrap of hemp. Your resilience, a quiet defiance. The Temps dynasty's pressures shape the workshop. The emperor's tributes and wars drain silk, and droughts shrink mulberry yields, thinning rations. You notice less tofu, weaker tea. Whispers of the An Lashan rebellion stir in distant regions, but defiance here means death. The workshop is your world, Its looms, both sustenance and prison, where survival hinges on cunning like hiding a silk thread for lean days. You work in silence, wary of Zhang's rod and informers among the weavers. May's punishment reveals the unseen labor that fueled the Tang's splendor. Weavers like you, unrecorded in histories, wove the silks that adorned the empire. Your struggles, hunger, fear, exhaustion hidden beneath its vibrancy. Today, we see echoes in those who toil unnoticed, their work sustaining society's brilliance. May's desperate act, though punished, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered in weavers' hearts. What other silent labors shaped the Silk Road's glory, and how do their echoes persist in our world? Story 15, Labor in the Shadow of Rome's Colosseum. Nanjan waking in the dim, damp confines of a stone cell in Rome, around 100 CE, under the Flavian dynasty. The air is thick with the scent of sweat and straw from your pallet, shared with other laborers in the shadow of the Colosseum. You are a service, a laborer tasked with maintaining the grand amphitheater, owned by the imperial overseer, Decimus. As dawn creeps through a narrow slit, you rise, pulling on a rough woolen tunic, patched and stiff with grime, and begin your day's toil. Your first task is hauling sand to the Colosseum's arena floor, your back straining under heavy baskets as you trudge through crowded streets. The sand, used to soak up blood from gladiatorial games, must be fresh for the next spectacle, and a delay could earn a lash from Decimus's whip. Your hands, calloused from shoveling, ache as you spread the sand, the roar of past crowds echoing in your ears. You pause to sip sour posca from a clay jug, careful not to spill. As every move is watched, by mid-morning you're cleaning the hypogeum, the underground maze of tunnels beneath the arena. The air is stifling, smelling of oil and beast cages as you scrub bloodstains from stone. Your meal, eaten in a dim corner, is coarse bread and a few olives, sometimes a scrap of salted fish, if rations are generous. Hunger lingers. You chew wild fennel from the Tiber's banks to dull it, a trick from older servants. Your labor earns no coin, only meager rations, and you mend your tunic with scraps to endure. Rome's hierarchy looms large. You lower your eyes when patricians pass, their togas pristine against your filthy tunic. Decimus favors some laborers with lighter tasks, like oiling trapdoors, if they offer flattery or scavenged goods. Community forms in shared work, hauling ropes or cleaning cages, but trust is fragile. Some report slights for extra bread. Freedom is a distant dream. Servi are bound to their masters, and runaways face crucifixion or the mines. As you drag a sack of sand to the arena, you overhear whispers of unrest. A laborer named Lucius was caught hiding a small loaf of bread, likely to feed his starving kin. Decimus's sharp eyes noticed the missing ration, and tension ripples through the laborers' quarters. Such theft threatens the Colosseum's brutal order, where every resource is counted. What might happen if Lucius's act is confirmed? And how could it disrupt the fragile balance of this monumental arena? The sun rises higher over Rome in 100 CE, and you, a service in the Colosseum's shadow, feel the day's heat intensify as you repair ropes in the hypogeum, your fingers raw from hauling sand, not coarse hemp. Each tug straining your hands as you ensure the trapdoors lift flawlessly for the games. The air is thick with the stench of oil and animal dung, and your woolen tunic, soaked with sweat, clings to your skin. A weak rope could draw Decimus's whip. The overseer's eyes sharp as he patrols the tunnels. Next, you're sent to the arena's edge, scrubbing bloodstains from the stone seats where spectators cheer. The work is grueling, your knees aching against the hard surface, but the Colosseum must gleam for Rome's glory. Your midday meal, coarse bread and a sip of postgears, eaten in a cramped alcove with others serving, silent to avoid Decimus's notice. Hunger gnaws. You hide an olive to chew later, or trade a mended strap for a dried fig. Your labor earns only rations, making every scrap vital. Rome's hierarchy is merciless. The emperor, distant in his palace, profits from the games, while Decimus favors servi who offers scavenged bits, broken tools, or extra rope with lighter tasks like tending lamps. You overhear grumbling in the alcove tales of lost freedoms before enslavement, but fear of the whip keeps voices low. Some whisper of revolts in distant provinces, but fleeing risks crucifixion. Bonds form over shared toil. Yet informers among the servi could betray you for favor. The Flavian dynasty's demands shape the Colosseum. The emperor's spectacles and wars drain resources, and you notice thinner bread, fewer olives. The Tiber's floods falter, tightening supplies, while the games grow bloodier to appease the masses. Survival demands cunning. You barter a sharpened stone for a scrap of cloth, or hide a crust, risking punishment. The Colosseum is your world, its stone walls both shelter and prison, where every task serves Rome's spectacle. The rumor of Lucius's stolen bread grows louder. By dusk, as you haul water to clean beast cages, Decimus confronts him near the rations store. A small loaf is found tucked in his tunic, evidence of his desperation. Lucius's eyes plead, his kin's hunger no excuse. The other servi watch in silence, fear and relief mingling as the Colosseum's order teeters. What punishment will Decimus impose, and how will it reshape the fragile trust among the laborers in this arena of blood and spectacle? Night falls over Rome's Colosseum in 100 CE, and you, a service, sit in the dim stone cell, the air heavy with straw and the faint reek of beast cages. Your hands, raw from knotting ropes and scrubbing stone, rest as you chew a stale crust saved from lunch. Lucius's theft of a loaf, uncovered in the rations store, looms over the laborers, threatening the arena's brutal order. The Colosseum, with its roaring crowds and blood-soaked sand, thrives on your toil, but this breach shakes its rhythm. You mend a torn tunic by lamplight, its flicker calming your nerves. As you await Decimus's judgment, the next morning, Decimus gathers the servi in the hypogeum, the torchlight casting shadows on the tunnel walls. Lucius stands, head bowed, as the overseer presents the stolen loaf. Decimus, his face stern, decrees the punishment: 10 lashes and reassignment to the mines, a fate worse than death. Lucius's plea for his starving kin is ignored, and you watch him dragged away, his cries echoing. Decimus's warning obedience is survival cuts deep as you return to hauling sand. Your movements cautious, trust among the servi fractured. The Colosseum's rhythm resumes, but Lucius's absence lingers. You scrub seats, repair ropes, and clean cages, your body aching from endless toil. Meals remain sparse bread and olives, but you hoard small gains, like a fig traded for a mended strap. The arena's spectacles enrich the emperor, but your labor earns only rations. Freedom is a myth. Servi are bound to their masters, and escape risks crucifixion. You persist, bartering a sharpened stone for a scrap of wool. Your resilience, a quiet defiance. The Flavian dynasty's pressures shape the Colosseum. Imperial wars and lavish games drain resources, and you notice thinner bread, fewer fish. The Tiber's weak floods shrink supplies, while the crowds demand bloodier shows. Whispers of slave revolts reach Rome, but defiance here means death. The Colosseum is your world, its walls both shelter and prison, where survival hinges on cunning like hiding a crust for lean days. You work in silence, wary of Decimus's whip and informers among the Servi. Lucius's punishment reveals the unseen labor that sustained Rome's glory. Servi, like you, unrecorded in histories, built and cleaned the Colosseum. Your struggles hunger, fear, exhaustion, hidden beneath its spectacle. Today, we see echoes in those who toil unnoticed, their work upholding society's grandeur. Lucius's desperate act, though punished, hints at the quiet resistance that simmered in servile hearts. What other silent labors shaped the eternal city, and how do their echoes persist in our world?